What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream. Today we have on Thomas, and we are talking about nice, soft, easy corals for a nice, easy, stressful reef tank. Now, everyone tends to go down that, acro road eventually. So I think soft corals don't get enough love. And there are definitely a ton of beautiful ones out there. So yeah, I figured it'd be kind of a good topic to dive in today. So how the heck are you, Thomas?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Just rocking and rolling. I've been busy, like new studio setup, drove me nuts for like, I don't know, 3 months, but it's finally together. And one of the reasons Devin and I came up with this idea about soft corals is because I really like soft corals. And I'm sure people have noticed that based on the fact that in some of my videos, I'll literally say, like, don't just do SPS because everybody's doing it, or don't just do LPS because everybody's doing it. Do what like feels right and works for you. And I think softies don't get enough love. And that tank right there beside me in the studio here, that Max Nano, that's going to be a softie dedicated tank. And yeah, that kind of kicked off this whole idea for why softies don't get enough love, man. They need the love.
It's true, they don't. Two things that I've wanted to do that I've kind of failed because I always get sucked into a mixed reef. I would love to do a Zoa only tank one day, and I'd also love to do just a 100% rock flower tank one day.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I think both those are great options.
oh,
Have you seen, like, do you remember back in the day, people actually used to do those like Zoa only displays, or Zoa, and what did, there was one that came up quite a number of times on a couple of different forums, and I think it was Zoas, and there was a massive thing with Recordias, Florida Recordias and
yep.
Recordia Yuma. There was like a whole, we're talking like 2000 and probably 7.
Yeah.
But
okay, speaking of Recordia, I'm going to pull this up because I have a photo. Sorry, Tom, so you can't see this one. But this was in Louisiana in one of the pet stores there, and the whole sand bed was nothing but Recordia. And it just looked awesome. There's a whole sea of it, this little nano on their display. I'm blanking on the store name. But yeah, super, super cool. Like, it just looked wicked. The sea of the, like, bumpy Recordia just looked so good. And
they're one of those corals that just looks amazing. Like, they can look absolutely phenomenal. And there's enough variation that you can have like a garden of them.
oh yeah,
which is really nice.
huge. Now, the same thing with like my old nano. I had almost the whole sand bed. It was like 90% covered in rock flowers, and it just looked amazing. Like, rock flowers are another super beautiful one. They're super hardy. They're like next to no maintenance, and they just look awesome. So now, I know, like, with acros, you got to worry about the right everything parameter wise.
Literally everything has to be perfect,
right? So yeah, your elk, your pH, everything. Whereas Omni tank, it could almost swing, be whatever. Most corals aren't going to care. So if you want a nice stress-free tank, a low-maintenance tank, you're in an office, and you don't want to be finicking with it, you can have, your $300 acro, and someone will walk up and see some flowy coral and be like, ooh, I like that one, right? So
yeah, no, exactly. That's the funny thing. People who don't like see a lot of reef tanks, or aren't a part of the reefing community, tend to be more enamored with the things that move around.
mm-hmm.
Right? So LPS tend to get a lot of love too, but like acros, people just don't, unless they know what they're looking for, just don't really have an appreciation for it. And I get that. Like, for somebody who's been in the hobby as long as you have, or as long as I have, we're always kind of like chasing the challenge, because it gets easy enough that we're like, well, I want to push the envelope a little bit, or we're gear junkies and we want to try all the toys. And
100%.
I mean, there's only so many toys softies are going to care about, right? It gets to a point where they're just like, we don't care what you're doing. We're happy we're growing. So yeah, like, there's something to be said for the simplicity of a soft coral tank, where you don't have to stress about it. Where, if the power goes out and the tank temperature drops 7 or 8 degrees,
like,
and they close up, yeah, they don't die from that. Like, they're so bulletproof. And to the point where, like, when I start tanks, the very first thing I'll throw in is some sort of leather coral, just because man, I used to like get shipments of corals when I used to work at a store, and leather corals sometimes showed up in a bag with no water in it, just covered in newspaper that was wet.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and they survived. They didn't care. I mean, it took a few days for them to open up sometimes, and that's the thing. Like, the fact that you don't have to stress about your levels, that they can drift around. You can just do water changes once in a while, and that's usually enough to get your calcium alkalinity and whatever back up. Or if you've got it packed full and you are seeing a drop in out, because they do use like the sclerites and stuff in their tissue does use some calcium, calcium carbonate. So I mean, you can just use all for reef in small amounts. One bottle is going to last you like a year probably, and you're golden, right? You're not stressing over getting the numbers perfect.
Exactly. Who cares about swings? They're fine. No big deal.
Exactly.
He needs a doser. Just dump some in
They
once a
grow
week.
fast, and they grow fast, right? So
Now,
your tank's like full in 6 months versus 6 months later, you're like, maybe I can put my first SPS in.
yeah. So shamelessly, one softie that I love, but I refuse to ever put in my tank is Xenia, just because it can grow so fast. But my buddy has some in his tank, and every time I go, I just love that like pulsing motion of it. It just looks super cool.
You can put them in a tank and keep them as long as they're like on an island in the substrate by themselves, so you can manage it, because they don't really like break off and float around or anything. Some do. I have some form of, I don't know what it is, some brown softie, probably in the Colt family or whatever, but it will drop branches all the time, and I keep finding them on the sand bed or like tucked behind the rock work, and I keep having to pull them out and chuck them away. But like that doesn't happen with pulsing Xenia. So yeah, if you can banish them to like a single piece of rock and manage that, they're a lot of fun. I remember one of the very first times I saw pulsing Xenia, it was in a 75-gallon display at a store in the US actually. And it was in like New York State, like Tonawanda or whatever it's called. And it was all pulsing Xenia, just a rock wall like you would expect back then. Like this is like probably 2005. And just covered in pulsing Xenia, floor to ceiling, with some Caulerpa in there just around, and a breeding colony of Bangai cardinals, just like a buttload of babies and just a spattering of adults. And I was like, that's a really cool display. But now I could imagine how frustrating that could have been. Like maybe they started with a small spot of Xenia and a whole bunch of other stuff, and it just got covered.
Took over. Have you seen people use like a Xenia for a sump as an export method? Does that actually work?
Yes.
Does it work?
Yes. I don't know if it works because I haven't personally tried it, but the few accounts that I have seen of it being used looked like a plausible, solution, because they ran it exactly like a refugium, where it was separate. It was a display refugium, but it was a tank separate of the main display, and it was just Xenia, and it was a part of the filtration setup. And the OP claimed to harvest, X amount of it every once in a while. Again, this is years ago. But they claimed to harvest X amount of it every once in a while, throw it out, and it would just grow back. So I would have to say, if I don't know if it works as well as something like chado or, an algae turf scrubber.
It's a prettier version.
But it is prettier. And also you can make those things work too well. So I guess it's possible that it's a better solution just in terms of not fully depleting everything.
Yeah, that's
possibly
fair. Yeah. Okay, so Melanie's asking, are clove polyps as invasive as Xenia? They are not.
No.
One of my favorites is rainbow clove polyps. Super duper pretty, really vibrant kind of color streaks with like kind of the green and those orange in it. So definitely love those guys. And for me, they've been a lot slower growing. I have them in both my tanks, so definitely a fan of the rainbow cloves.
I will echo that, and I actually hope to get some for that tank back there. And there's a few different variations of it. Some are like more on the pink side, some are more on the peach colored side, but it is very much like that green peach kind of. There's one species of clove that I can say for certain that you do not want in your tank, and it's blue clove polyps.
Oh.
They are intensely invasive.
Yes.
I haven't had any issues in the past with them actually damaging other corals or hurting other corals, but they will grow like out of hand, and they broadcast spawn. So they'll just show up in different spots in the tank, and then eventually you don't have anything in the tank and any like bald spots on your rock. It's just those cloves everywhere.
So on that note, next experiment. Then benzidol supposedly kills the purple clove polyps.
You have them?
On a bunch of my zoas that are on this 3-foot tank on the floor beside me. And I'm tired of this tank being on my floor, so I need to kill the blue clove polyps. I can like regain my limited office space. So I'm going to try dosing this to the tank, and hopefully it eradicates the purple clove and not the zoas. So
keep me posted.
I will.
I'm really curious to see if that works. But yeah, that's the only one I could say for certain you do not want to get.
Yes.
Unless you just want that exclusively.
Yes, basically. Rainbow clove polyps for the win. Yeah, definitely don't go for the purple. They're super, super tiny. They just grow over top of everything.
Yep.
Other types of leather corals too. Nephia corals. That's a really cool one. I have a neon green one. It's super duper bright. They do have like tan and peachy colors, but the neon green one definitely pops and stands out in the tank, which I'm a big fan of stuff that pops. So
yeah, one of my favorite corals of all time is the Palau neon green Palau Nephthia. And there's a few different variations of green Nephthia you can get, and they're all like, if you get one of the neon green ones, they're all just like super bright green and on similar shade of green, but you can also get cabbage coral, which is a leather cool. In that neon green color. I actually have one in the display tank in the other. I have no display tank in here yet because I'm actually waiting for an Aquaforest Ocean Guard 605 to show up, which will hopefully show up in first couple of weeks of February. Nice. And then I'm going to transfer everything from that tank to that tank, but that's going to be SPS dominant, and I'm going to move my softies into this tank and get some other stuff. But yeah, so that's a really nice one. Also, the Tyree like leather corals that have those bright green polyps but still have that pink base.
Yeah,
super nice.
Oh, I have that photo right here.
Nice.
So this one is one of the neon green toads. I think it's like a Japanese toadstool or something. Yeah, it has more like the peachy colored flesh, but like super duper bright green, vibrant polyps, which looks really awesome.
And I love that on those leathers, the polyps basically stand straight up. It's such like a uniform little plot of super green on top of this like pink cup. It's really nice. There's also a pink Nephthia that I got from a shop in Toronto, GTA Reef. Nice. That's pink. It extends kind of like a branching leather would. But the polyps are bright green like that. And then I have Japanese Limnalia, Limnalia is newer to me. I never had anything like that before, but I've got a Japanese Limnalia that's more of like a blue-green. It's not quite as...
Yeah. Be cool.
But yeah, there's a lot.
Have you ever seen branching GSP?
Yes, back in the day, it was referred to as Briarium because people couldn't figure out, like people, I guess, didn't realize that it's all Briarium. Yeah. But yeah, branching Briarium. It's funny because it grows in like tubes. It's not like branches. It kind of tubes out.
I saw one in a photo. I don't know if it was manicured or what, but it looked like a Gargonian. It was branching GSP, and I was like, that's actually super cool. But I've never ever seen it for sale. So
yeah, well, green star polyps are a Gargonian.
Really?
Yes, it's a carpeting Gargonian species. I'm almost 1,000% positive, which is a ridiculous number to refer to.
That's a pretty, I'll trust you on it. It's some pretty high confidence.
Yeah. So you can get, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's in the Gargonian family, but you can get a branching version of it, which basically instead of growing matted, it can mat, but then it starts to grow up, but those like branches are hollow. So at the tips, they're often like a little circle and you can see inside of them.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
But yeah, I knew a few people who had it way back in the day and nobody would ever sell me a piece back then. I guess I wasn't popular enough yet.
Dang them.
They were coveting it, you know? That was like one of the things back then, like they'd give me any SPS they had, you know, but I couldn't buy that for some reason.
Branching GSP, nope, sacred. And it's never for sale, so apparently they held it too close.
Yeah. I don't know what happened. Or maybe it just like morphed out into being regular GSP over time.
Well, maybe. You never know. So would you consider Gargonians a softie?
I do. I consider like corky fingers and stuff especially. And even sea fans I usually group together with soft corals. And I feel like they make a really nice pairing in a display. Like where you have primarily soft corals. If you want a more rigid look, like Gargonians, they fit the bill, especially the photosynthetic ones. Get some like Gargonians, sea fans, stuff like that. They're just they're right alongside softies for me. I don't know what their calcium demands are because their skeleton's like brown.
It's more like a stick,
flexible.
Though, right?
Yeah.
It can't be much.
No, I think they're more food reliant and light reliant than they are parameter like alkalinity, calcium, magnesium reliant. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, most of the corals we're talking about today consume very low levels of these elements, so they will consume some, but it's
yes,
nothing like an encrusting coral that's building, a massive skeleton. Like a lot of these, like the Gargonian, if they do have a skeleton, is like a very thin, minimalistic one.
yeah,
But yeah, Gargonians are definitely pretty cool. Like they add some really nice kind of depth to the tank. They're flowy. They give really cool looks. Now, there's two types. There's photosynthetic ones, which are the nice and easy ones. There's NPS, which means non-photosynthetic. Now, those ones you have to feed. So you have to feed your tank quite a bit. So they actually are a good fit for a softy tank, which doesn't mind higher nutrients. So it's
yeah.
another consideration.
Sometimes very difficult to keep nutrients up in a softy tank. I've had issues where like soft coral dominant tanks, you like dump food in and
Yep.
like the nutrients disappear because the soft corals are pretty dang good at removing it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like the soft corals have, I think they're called sclerites. It's been a long time, but they just have these little spicules. That's what they're called. So
Spicules.
they have little spicules inside of their body, which are like little, if you can imagine in your mind, like little spears or like rice-shaped calcium carbonate bodies inside of their tissue that help them stay erect when they're filled with water. They add some rigidity, but
Mm-hmm.
it's so minimal in comparison to like a LPS or SPS coral that their consumption of those major elements is very low, and they don't mind if they get low.
Mm-hmm.
They might not grow as fast if it's super low, but they also don't react the same. Like LPS will straight up just start receding if they don't have enough.
Yeah.
Right? They'll stop growing, and then you'll be like, "Hey, why can I start seeing the little teeth around the edge of my octobubble or my torch?" And
It's receded.
sometimes it's just started peeling away, or its inability to continue growing has resulted in it
So,
backtracking.
what do you think is the main cause for that? It's like something's depleted or something's not happy, but
Yeah. I don't know.
okay.
Yeah, straight up don't know, because I've had that happen in tanks where parameters that I could test for.
Mm-hmm.
This is before ICP, I guess. Uh, were great,
Yep.
exactly where I would expect them to be. SPS are growing well. For some reason, the LPS aren't happy.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it's a pollutant issue, like something elevated beyond what it should be, lack of nutrients. I mean, these days, a lot of us are dosing amino acids and feeding a lot. So it shouldn't be like protein and fat and other, tissue building nutrients. But I have one coral that's been reseeded, I don't know, for like 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
It will not open all the way, but it refuses to die, so I won't give up on it.
It's a
You know what I
survivor.
mean?
It's good
Yeah,
though.
it's just sitting there. And the person who I got it from, they had a similar experience with all of the corals from that actual frag. The mother colony did the same thing. So
Huh.
I'm not certain it isn't bacterial in nature,
Could be.
but
So-
yeah, I don't know. I got to get my tests. I've had the kit to do that test for like, I'm not even lying, like 2 months, and I still haven't done it and sent it back.
Slacking. It might be
I'm
worth
so bad.
giving. So if a coral you suspect has kind of a bacteria thing, sometimes giving it an iodine dip can work really well because that will kind of disinfect a lot of the bacterias.
Yeah.
I do that when I fry corals all the time. I'll have some salt water and put some iodine in it. I'll give them a little swish or dip in there. I find that helps. So it might be worth a shot.
Yeah, I have done a few dips, but I haven't done iodide because I didn't have any on hand. I actually looked at all the stuff I have from my cuts and whatever, but they're all tinctures, so they have a lot of alcohol in them.
Mm.
So I just didn't do that. But I have Coral Clean. Actually, it arrived not long ago by Tropic Marin,
Yep.
and it looks like iodine. I haven't read the label yet, but
Promising.
I might give that a go and see how it turns out. But yeah, I'm suspecting it's probably bacterial or something irritating it. I got to bust at the microscope.
Yeah. Gotta love the microscope. That's a fun, complete sidebar, but it's a fun little side rabbit hole.
Oh my God. It's a completely different hobby within our hobby.
It really is.
For everybody watching, if you guys ever get a microscope, it doesn't even have to be a super expensive one. Mine was like $150 on Amazon. You when you put just a small drop of water, I
Mhm.
just scraped a little bit of the junk off my glass in a drop of water and put that on the microscope, and it was like an entire city of things going on.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling, and then you start to realize why things like that, the testing that aquabiomics is doing, why that idea is so important for the hobby. It's because there are so many things going on at a level that we can't, perceive without the use of a microscope
Hmm.
and without proper testing. Like, there's no way I could sample, like, get that kind of
Yeah.
data with a microscope. I
You,
don't know how long I'd have to spend. But yeah, it must have a massive impact on our
you know
tanks. For
what?
all those tanks that always had issues and people are like, I don't
Yep.
know what it is. Everything looks fine.
I,
Anyways, go.
oh, no, I think this is going to be a good excuse. I might actually buy like the USB microscope camera, and it could be a fun thing for some streams just to like randomly sample stuff and check it out on the microscope.
Dude,
That'd be fun.
absolutely.
All right,
Yeah,
this might
like
be a future stream.
you have
Mi-
to do it.
Micro
I'd like to
world.
be there for it. I'll come.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay. Other super duper easy corals that are pretty. Zoas. I love zoas. They're like little underwater flowers.
Mushrooms.
And mushrooms.
Discosoma. Discosoma are super easy mushrooms. Like, there's all kinds striped. The polka dot, Superman polka dotted ones.
Yep. Now,
Sorry?
okay, so I'm gonna say there's two classes of mushrooms too. With some of the discosome, some of the other ones, you have certain ones that will grow like a plague and like take over crazy fast, and you have other ones that are slow growing, which are usually nice and pretty and slow. So like there's like certain green ones or red. Like there's certain ones that will grow crazy fast. So if you are gonna go down the mushrooms, I would advise not getting one that takes over. Like this one I'm just pulling up is a lemon citrus rhodactis or citrus ultra rhodactis, whatever the heck it is. But yeah, super cool. Doesn't take over. It's probably one of the brightest corals in my tank. Like it is insane.
The rhodactis. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a ton of rhodactis. I used to have some green rhodactis back in the day that grew faster than my discosoma.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like, I think it just depends on where they're collected from and what kind of environment they're used to. And some mushrooms are really good at capturing food, and other ones just don't bother. Like,
Yeah.
have you seen your rhodactis? If you like sprinkle food near them, they'll just wrap up on it.
Sometimes they do.
Yeah.
Well, I've done a few time lapses. I haven't done one age. I should again, but it's kind of cool because you can see it slowly work it to the mouth and like suck it in.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
cool to watch.
Avoid elephant ear mushrooms. They're not mushrooms. They're just anemones, and they'll eat fish.
Sneaky,
So
sneaky.
don't do those.
Yeah.
There's a false elephant ear mushroom, which has multiple mouths, and they are very slow growing, but they get very large, so they can be impressive, but they're not dangerous like like those freaking elephant ear anemones.
Now on anemones, tube anemones. That's one
So much fun.
I've never seen a huge tank full, but they can be super pretty, super easy. Get some really cool colors like pinks and purples and very vibrant.
They
ones.
have a potent sting, so I've seen fish fall victim to tube anemones. Probably not as many as I've seen fall victim to carpets.
Yeah.
But yeah, they got a bit of a sting on them, but they have a very cool, like, kind of cryptic look compared to most of the anemones that we have in the hobby. Like, tube anemones are very, very neat looking. And all the coloration's kind of like focused in the mouth area.
Yeah.
And then it gets clear the closer you get to the edges of the tentacles. And I've always thought that's a very neat look, almost like a lot of the aquarium, like fake aquarium ornaments that you see of like anemones and stuff. It's the only anemone that if they made a fake one would actually probably look good.
That's so true, actually.
And it's one of the few that you can like stick in the sand bed or tuck under rock work, and it just stays there and is happy and fine. Like, they do not move around. Wherever you stick it, that's where it's going to stay.
Yeah. So true. On an anemone train, rock flowers. I know we did kind of touch on this one earlier.
Love them.
Beautiful. Love this. So many variations. Like, this is a top-down photo of one of the rocks in my water box, and it's tons. All the different little stripy things, the right colors. Pinks and purples and reds, and there's such a variety.
It's another thing you can collect, like zoas, right? You can easily collect them, and you could have 5 that have the same like color typing, where they've got like the white and orange skirt and like a green disc.
Yeah.
And you could have 3 or 4 of them, and they all look different enough that sitting side by side, you can tell them all apart. Like very cool. The ones, I haven't seen in a long time, but somebody posted them recently. I was like, man, I got to start a collection of those again. The maxi minis, man, like the mini
Yeah.
carpets. Oh my gosh. I remember they blew up probably 2008, 2009, somewhere around there. They got super popular. But man, I don't know.
They're
I want
so
those
sticky. If you get out of your
They
hands,
are.
they touch you. It's like,
Adhesium.
ah.
Pizza anemones too. I actually had a really cool pizza anemone
What's a
back in the
pizza
day.
anemone?
It's a carpet anemone. It's just
Yep.
a mini version. It is not clownfish friendly, just like maxi minis are not
Yep.
clownfish friendly. But if you thought those mini carpets were sticky, you should try touching a pizza anem. I think their actual, the second half of their Latin name is adhesium, like adhesive.
Adhesium.
Dude, you can't get them off your hand. If they stick to you, like, oh, you're in trouble.
Oh, I believe it.
Especially on the forearm. Don't do that. Ask me how I know.
Been there, done that.
It was an accident. Yeah, it hurt a lot.
Dang. I've had one stick to me, and I remember it was a pain to get it off. I used to have one back in the day. And I don't know if I ate a fish or something. I can't remember why I got rid of it, but there's some reason it got evicted eventually. It was pretty though.
Yeah, they're cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like anemones and softy tanks are really nice. Also because softies tend to do pretty good at getting stung and not dying from it.
True.
Like if you get two softies that touch each other and one of them's getting beat up in this situation, it just keeps that half of its body retracted. Do you know what I mean? Like
that's true.
It tells you, it's like we're fighting. Can you do something about this, please? And funny enough, like that Japanese limnalia, I had to pull it down and move it because it was getting too close to I had it sitting right beside the pink nephthia with the green polyps.
Yeah.
And the pink nephthia was half closed during the day when that guy was fully open because they were touching and I guess it was losing. So I moved it. But it's nice to know, like with SPS, this is a great point going towards the fact that it's a lot easier to deal with softies. Mm-hmm. You have time to react even if you don't notice right away.
That's true.
Right? If that was an SPS getting stung, I would have come back to a half dead SPS.
It'd be white the next day.
Right. And even same with LPS, they get badly stung and like half of that polyp or that head could just die from it. But softies, they sting each other and one of them goes, ow, do something. And then you fix the problem and it goes, okay, now I'm happy again.
Yeah.
So.
And if you got a frag, pull a pair of scissors and chop off a limb. And
exactly. You don't have to think it. Flush it down the toilet. It'll grow back in a week anyway. Like.
Have you ever had a carnation coral?
I have.
You have to do anything special? Like they're MPS, I think.
They are non-photosynthetic.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the problem. I never had it long enough. This is a funny story. It's only funny. Well, it's not that funny. It's just a crappy story. I had a tank. This is a long time ago. This is 2003. So I had a tank and I had my very first carnation coral. It was also probably like one of the first tanks I ever had. And I was told I had to feed it, and I'd feed it frozen brine shrimp, the baby brine shrimp or whatever. Like I'd always squirt stuff on it. Mm-hmm. But one day it got smaller, like noticeably smaller. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And then the next day it got noticeably smaller, but not in it's shrinking, more like branches are disappearing. And I was like, well, couldn't figure out what was going on. Then a couple of days later, I saw this red-eyed crab, black, about yay big, running across my sand bed, which I did not put in the tank. This is back when you got like live rock that had all kinds of crap on it, running away with a piece of freaking carnation coral. So anyways, he ended up in so I evicted him to a glass of hot water. And I was not very kind to I was very mad at him for destroying my coral. That coral didn't end up making it. I think it just got picked on too many times by that crab to the point where I think he probably got a secondary infection or just, I don't know what happened. It just failure to thrive from that point forward. Mm-hmm. But that was my only experience with a carnation coral, unfortunately. I didn't have the drive to try another one. I was still mad at the crab. I would probably try one. I know, it's just, I'm holding on to a grudge. But I'd probably try another one if I could find one.
No, that's fair. Yeah. I probably will one of these days. I've seen them in the LFS like ages ago when I debated every time, but I never like pulled the trigger on one. But I think now I'm at the stage. I probably will.
There's also way more products geared towards feeding non-photosynthetic corals on the market today than there was 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Like the amount of different foods we can get access to or that have been made is staggering by comparison. Back in the day, like we just try to find anything that worked. I remember when cyclopes like was the best thing that ever happened to reefing,
Yeah.
and people would like cross the border into the US to get like bricks, red package, like foil packages of cyclopes. It was like a brick this big, just to feed the corals because it was like the newest hottest thing.
Yep.
But now like it's not hard to access that stuff in dry form, in frozen form. There's everything. So I think
many options.
Actually, if you want to try NPS, now's the time to do it. Like we have
Mhm.
everything we need at this point.
No, it's true. I mean, dry form, I know Brightwell has all their miniature dry feeds, which I've used that one. Or on the frozen side, I got PE Canalists, which works really well. If you want the bottle, Reef Nutrition makes a bunch. Like there's a ton of options out there now.
Yeah. And all kinds of stuff like oyster eggs, all kinds of fine particulate food that you can just dump in the tank, and like who knows what's actually eating it.
Well, okay, so
we're not doing like gut examinations of the coral or anything, but the fact that people do that and the corals don't die and seem to grow, I think is about as much proof as you need. Just follow whatever the heck they're doing and you should have similar results.
Okay, so different corals are going to like different particle sizes, and you don't really know for sure which ones eat which. That's why I just like randomly mixing it up. Like I don't have just one set one, maybe one day I'll do that, or if I'm feeding the tank, I'll be like little of this, little of that, little of that, and just make a concoction, right? Because certain corals are going to pick certain things. Now, MPS, obviously you need to feed them. But a lot of soft corals you don't. Like they will just exist, they will survive.
Oh yeah.
If you feed them, they will likely grow faster. Depends on the coral, obviously, but yeah, MPS you definitely want to feed. But a lot of the softer, easier, like the mushrooms or Recordias, a lot of these you don't need to feed, but they'll be happy if you do feed them.
Yeah, sometimes it's just a matter of you feed them, they grow faster.
Basically,
like mushrooms, like the Redactus we're talking about. If you find a mushroom that is willing to accept food, it grows a heck of a lot faster if you feed it. Acans, another great example. You can not feed your acans and just they'll get whatever they get out of the water column. They'll work off the lighting. When I say acans, I mean micromusa. Or you could feed them and then they seem to grow like 30 times faster.
And the colors are 10 times better. I find with micro umisas, acans, if you don't feed them, their color gets very like bland or single colored, where if you feed them, every couple of days, they'll get a lot more colorful. You'll see more colors come out of it, and they'll be a lot more like rainbowy afterwards. So, I mean, they're like Softies Plus because they're more of an LPS, but they definitely get way better coloration if you feed them. So, So I guess, I don't know. Do we bridge into LPS or stick to the softy side?
No, we stick to softies. Here's the thing. Here's my gripe. I'm gonna rant a little bit.
Rant away, buddy.
I think this is what I think. Everybody sucks. No, I'm just kidding. What I think is the unfortunate truth is not enough people are willing to like do a softy only tank or dedicate themselves to a softy only tank, because again, it's everybody sees it as kind of entry level and beginner. And people want to get into what everybody else is doing that's super popular, and LPS, SPS, whatever. And as a result, you see SPS dominant tanks, you see LPS dominant tanks, and those are long-term tanks. But you very rarely see well-scaped, well done, well thought out, well planned collections of soft corals in a single tank that's dedicated to soft corals. And I think there are enough soft corals, enough different growth formations or types. So whether it's branching, or I don't like plating, I'll say cabbage coral plates because it's basically what it does. It foliates around a rock, right? There are so many different soft coral colors, sizes, types, polyp sizes, everything. You can make a stunning display, I think, that is as dynamic in the way it looks in both shape and coloration as a really nice LPS tank or SPS tank, but nobody does it. And it just breaks my heart. And like I was telling you earlier that I'm doing that tank softy specific, but I have a soft.
You have a soft spot in your heart for
soft
softies?
Spot in my heart for softies, and I always work them into like every single tank, and I'm pretty selective, but I have like some standard not even referring to zoas. Like everybody loves zoas. You don't even have to try. Zoas are collectible as all heck, and people love them. But like the Japanese limnalia that I have, first time ever having one, I love the thing. Really, really cool. That green and pink Nephthia that I've got. But there's also like that Avatar Nephthia that GTA Reef has. I think I sent you a picture of it in our chat, or at least a link to it. Really pretty coral. It's a branching one. It's kind of got this gold green colored polyp and kind of a blue green, very kind of like crystalline looking colored body. There's also, I don't know if you remember the, what was it called?
Oh, that was crazy, that goldy one. I just found the photo and pulled it up. Yeah, that's crazy looking.
Like that's the thing. And softies are so easy to keep for the most part. Like all the ones that I've just mentioned have not given me any kind of trouble. And they're the ones that I'll say it straight up. When I started the tank that I have, I got frags, and all of my SPS frags, which I had quite a few, all died.
Yeah.
The tank just wasn't ready. It was already up for so long, but you know, the biome wasn't there. So the soft corals survived. They survived everything. And it was like a little 1-inch frag of this green Japanese limnalia. And now it's the size of bigger than a softball. It's like a small pumpkin. And
nice.
Right. And it survived. It just didn't care. But there's so many like really hot softies, like even blue symposium. It's such a simple coral and I love it. And there was back in the day, there was purple. It's a zenith of some kind, and I can't remember what they used to call it. But it was like a branching
blue symposium. That's what that is. Sorry, I had to Google that. My buddy has that in his tank, and I've been trying to figure out what the heck is. Oh, it's beautiful. It's like GSP, but like more vibrant.
Micro
stuff.
Yeah, it's micro. It doesn't grow nearly as fast as GSP.
Is it aggressive or does it take over anything?
No, it grows too slow to do that.
Perfect.
It's not like ultra slow. And that's the other thing. You can like pick and choose what softies you keep based on how fast they grow. But like, man, I'm just dying to see more soft coral dedicated tanks that are really well done. And the other thing that I think you can mix into a soft coral tank relatively easily is ornamental algae.
Yeah.
Like you want to throw dragon's breath in there to get like some deep reds, because there really aren't that many like really deep red colors in the soft coral world. Throw some dragon's breath in there. It's going to grow at the same rate as all of the soft corals anyway.
Oh, and it's super pretty. I had some, but my tangs ate it, unfortunately. Not worth the tangs. Quick shout out, Melanie. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Great stream. Much appreciated. Yeah, I'm actually happy you just told me that is, because that's one I've been trying to figure out what the heck it's called for ages in his tank. I got this small chunk now.
Steal it. I have actually got a frag of it the last time I got a shipment. So, nice. But yeah, I've got that Avatar Kenya coming, and
that thing was beautiful. That was very colorful.
It's stunning, and that's the thing. There are really nice softies. It's just I have a feeling, in part, it's that because there isn't a super high demand for soft corals and high price tags for soft corals that aren't specifically, I don't know, bounce mushrooms or whatever. Do I sound like I don't like those?
Bounce mushrooms?
I don't like the pricing of things. It gets out of hand, and I'm just like, what is this? What is happening?
I have one. I agree. I have the like kryptonite, the green one. At first, I didn't even like them. I thought they were like ugly and whatever. Like, they look like they're like something's wrong with them. But then they grew.
Like jawbreakers too.
Yeah. The green ones
they're pretty. I think they look great. I think the issue is that people charge too much money for this crazy stuff.
I agree.
That's my thing. It's a soft coral. I'm just going to remind everybody it's a soft coral. All right, just relax. Let's be fair here. It's going to grow relatively quick. But yeah, like I want to see more people like throw themselves into a softie tank and like really have a crack at it. And there's almost an art to keeping things in the right ratio or size to one another because they grow fast. So like, yeah, you're going to trim your corals more. Like it's going to happen. But people act like that's a problem. You've got one half of the community is like, why won't my corals grow? They don't grow fast enough. My tank looks empty forever. And then you've got the other half that's like, soft corals grow too fast. I don't want them.
I know. It's funny, eh?
There's got to be people in the middle that are like, and I bet you a lot of people who have tried to go the SPS route or even LPS dominated tanks, that are not finding the success they would like, or
Mhm.
are not finding it as rewarding as they'd hoped, because it is a slow uphill climb for a lot of people. They would have had a lot more fun with a softy tank. You know what the other cool thing about a softy tank is? You can put fish in there that eat coral.
True. Now, whenever I see people that have like predator tank or like fish only tank, in my mind, I'm always like, why don't you load that up with soft coral? It'll be so easy and you don't have to worry about it.
Right?
Yep.
You don't even need, and that's the other thing. Like, think about the lighting.
Anything.
We go crazy spending, like, I don't even want to think about how much money and lighting I've gone through in my life. But like, we spend so much on lighting to hit these like high par numbers and to get tons of light in there in just the right way for all of these like really finicky. Do you know what soft corals care about? That there's a light. Like, the par range we're hitting is so low for them, and they can tolerate it.
Like 50
And
par, they're like, oh, perfect, thanks.
yeah, and albeit some of them don't color up right unless you hit them with more light. I've had zoas morph on me just moving them in the tank, right? So 100%. Like, if you're going to be keeping specific corals that come from highlight environments and expect them to look that way, you're probably going to want to hit them with highlight. But the fact of the matter is, you don't have to do it. Like, for instance, I've taken a leather coral that I had in a system, I don't know, for like a year, and it grew nice and everything. And it was a pink toadstool leather, like the plainest pink toadstool leather you could possibly think of. And I stuck it in my SPS tank under a Radion, and it went from getting probably 50, 60 par, I'm going to say 75 par tops in that tank, to getting like 400 par or better because it was so close to the surface. Do you know what happened? It turned bright friggin' green, the whole thing. It didn't look like the same coral. People kept asking me where it came from. It was just a $40 at the time. It was like, 2014. It was like a $40 soft coral that nobody cared about. And you stick it under highlight, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I better grow some sunscreen before I turn crispy. But yeah, like, the fact of the matter is, they don't care that much. So like, you can really make a much more affordable, like, completely packed coral display, even from equipment standpoint. Like, what if you want to dose not by hand for some reason? It's one doser in all for reef. You know, like, you're laughing.
Easy peasy.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's a big appeal too, right? It's just low maintenance. Like, if I'm ever like my old retirement tank when I'm just like lazy and just want something pretty, totally see myself. That's when I will do my only softy tank. I'll be like, this is nice,
there you go, man. Yeah.
Low maintenance. Although the other side of the spectrum is everything's basically automated, so it's pretty darn low maintenance now. But besides the point.
But how much did you spend on the automation?
Lots.
Yes, exactly.
Crazy amounts. It's like a slow burn though, because you just like plunk away at it over the years and keep adding on.
Yeah.
And adding on. I mean,
And honestly, that's the best way to do it, because if you get into the hobby not familiar with the hobby and just blow all your money on equipment, usually what happens, and I don't know how many times you've seen it, but a lot of the time you see those tanks for sale like a year later, and every piece of equipment, because people are under the impression that the equipment makes the reef tank, but it's not. It's not just the equipment. The equipment makes it easier in some cases, but I mean, with controllers, like, I just got into controllers 2 years ago when I joined BRS, because how could I not, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
But up until then, I'd done everything manually because that's what I was used to. It's a tool, and I'll tell you right now, I still don't know everything about it, because
I'll help you.
Yeah, thanks. Just send me all the, like, I don't want to program anything. I just use all the preset stuff on it. And I think I've stolen a couple of things from Randy. But just because I don't want to learn it, like, so in depth that I'm like writing, I don't care that much. Like, do the thing I need you to do, and I'm happy. Don't want to overcomplicate it. But if it's too complicated, you're screwed.
That's fair. Like,
you can't use it.
If you want, I'll give you access to mine. You can just copy and paste stuff out of mine. That will be similar. But like, the automation stuff, and like, okay, if my elk's too high, turn off the CO2 in my calcium reactor. Or if my pH is too high, turn off my calc. Like, I just stuff like that, right? So it's it just saves the little things of you going to have to deal with it, and it's just like that extra like safety blanket of neglect.
And I fully agree. And this is kind of exactly my point. Like, you build those things as you're adding stuff to the system, as you're changing the way your system works, versus if you get it all at once, and you have to set it all up all at once and you don't really know what you're doing, you have a complicated mess you're trying to sort out. Versus like what I did with my controller, my very first Apex, was I did nothing.
Yeah.
I set it up exactly the way it was. I learned the only thing I did that was weird was I set up my CO2 sensor for the room.
Mm-hmm.
My
Ooh,
Siemens.
how do you like that?
I friggin' love it, dude. Do you know what's crazy?
I want to do
I
that.
will. It's worth it, and I can watch CO2 go up and pH drop.
That's cool.
And I know like at what CO2 level I'm gonna see the reaction start happening, or how much CO2 it takes to accelerate that curve. Like it happens faster.
Yep.
And we'd be shooting a video, and in the room it usually hovers between 600 and 700 ppm, I think it is.
Yeah.
And we'll start shooting, and within half an hour of us being in there, it's up at 1700 just from breathing in this room. So we'll crack the window. But if I didn't know beforehand to crack the window, that CO2 level in the room would build up and my pH would drop like a stone, or I just start burning through the lime media. So yeah, but between that and I think the only other thing I did was set up my T5 light with the 0 to 10 volt because it was dimmable.
Okay,
but
nice.
that's all I did extra. So everything else I start doing, like when I set up my calcium reactor on the new tank, which I'm going to try a calcium reactor, which I've never done before.
Nice.
I'm going to use the Apex to control the calcium reactor. So like I'm going to start, and I'm going to try to use the Apex also to control my, I'm going to try ozone. You've convinced me.
Yes. Attaboy. Okay. Ozone, I get asked ozone questions constantly. If you have a little tank, don't worry about it. If you have a larger tank, usually when you look down like the log end, or, you know, like in an 18-inch cube, you probably won't notice it. Well, you might. But the bigger the tank is, the more noticeable it is. And it just gives you that crystal clear water, as if like, you know, you pop in fresh carbon and it's extra clear, but it gives you that all the time, which is the nice thing. Side note, later, send me your CO2 sensor build list, because I need to create one now.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I've got it somewhere, but it's all thanks to Harry. He kind of did all of the hard work, and then I just bought stuff and followed his recommendations. So I actually have a PDF from him that lays out exactly what to do, what models of sensor are going to work for it. I think the only like expensive piece you need is the advanced sensor module, the ASM module for the Apex.
Okay.
But yeah, it's nice to be able to see everything in real time. And that's the other thing. It's that sensor is in real time. Like you will see it the moment it changes, you'll see the reading.
That's cool. I like that. It would be, it's probably overkill, but it'd be cool to have like two of them in a weird way. Like have one in your skimmer line to like monitor like the media usage, or how
that'd be cool. Or to see what the CO2 drop is.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I don't know of an inline sensor.
I know. That'd be cool though. I guess you could feed your like recirculating thing through like a little box with the side.
I was just about to say you could probably put it in a Tupperware container with a couple of barbs on it.
Yeah, I think that'd work.
Yeah.
Maybe do something cool. But yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see, because you'd be able to tell when your media is becoming frosted.
Yeah. That's the other thing. I don't think softies care that much if the pH drops a bit.
They don't care. You do whatever you want with them.
Yeah.
I mean, they probably do, but not as much.
Cranky. Yeah, well, they have those spicules. They don't need like they don't like melt their skeleton if the pH gets too low.
I know. So it's true. So yeah. So overall, you want a super duper easy tank? Softies. They're your friend.
Softies.
Yep. I would have a hard time doing only softies, because I always get sucked into mixed reef, because I'm like, oh, I like this. Oh, I like this. And then they all end up in it. Like it would be hard to restrain myself to only softies. You
know what? If you have multiple tanks, it's probably easier. Yeah. But I'm the same way. Like I'm a mixed reef guy that tend to be SPS heavy, and I would like to say that clam heavy as well. But where I'm at in the world, over in Nova Scotia, there is no clams to be found, and the ones that are here, if I do find them, are lackluster and ridiculously expensive. But up until this tank, I didn't have a tank that didn't have at least 3 or 4 clams in it.
Oh, nice.
Dude, they're awesome. I love clams. But yeah, it's always been SPS and clam dominated tanks. that are also mixed, because I'd always have softies in there, and I'd also have brain corals. I love lobophilia and open brains, and trachophilia are cool too.
Yeah.
But also, I think a lot of the ones that I like have been reclassified now, so I don't even know what the hell they are anymore.
Don't you hate that? Like, he changed the name on you?
Yeah, because now I want to say what I like, but I don't even know if it's right. They're probably whatever the heck now.
Canthophilia?
Yeah. They may even be Australomusa. I don't even know.
Yeah.
They're the ones that kind of, I think they were called Lobos for a while, but they're
blue, the little donutty guys?
They're donutty. They're like blue, then red, then like sometimes had a yellow line, and then the mouth would usually be blue. Do you know what I'm talking about? I've had those. And then also maze brains.
They're cool.
I friggin' love maze brains. I love them.
Geesh.
Anyways.
Courtney Shadow, thank you so much for the super chat. Much appreciated. Okay, question for you, Thomas. If you did like a softy specific tank of only one type of coral, what would you pick?
One type of softy?
Yeah.
That's hard. Oh gosh. Okay, this is so boring, but I'd probably pick zoanthids and polyphyllus, like anything in the zoanthid family. Reason being is there's so much variance that even if I'm sticking to just that one, unless you're going to allow me to pick anything from anything that falls under leather coral, because that's also a pretty wide swath, and you could get a lot of stuff, including branching. So that might actually be more fun. So does it have to be like a specific species of leather, or anything under that umbrella?
No, just under one umbrella.
Okay, I would do everything in like the leather / Nephthia kind of wheelhouse, because you get everything. You get a little bit of everything for sure.
That's true.
Do you know what I miss? Do you those yellow Fiji leathers?
I haven't seen yellow ones in ages.
Ages, buddy, ages. But those were top notch. And yellow sand polyps. Do you remember what did they call them? Yellow sand polyps? Were they sand polyps?
The like super long tentacle. Polyps. Yeah, snake polyps.
They were yellow. Well, no, snake polyps are something else. Snake polyps are also awesome, but they were yellow
with really long lashes. I want to call them
sun polyps. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I used to have those.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I don't know what happened to them.
Apparently, they were like a shell, like a coral that needed to be near sand and substrate, because in the wild they constantly got like debris blown up on them, and that's how they fed. So we'd be trying to keep them in like these pristine tanks, and they would just like die away. But anybody who had a dirty tank, they thrived.
Yeah.
I can't remember what they called, but that's another one I haven't seen in a long time, actually.
I haven't either. And I had them at
Fiji leathers and those guys. Yeah.
I don't know what happened to them though.
I don't know, man. They disappeared. But yeah, I think there's a lot under the leather category. And that's the other thing. I kind of want to, well, this tank's way too small for like butterflies, but I would love to do
butterfly fish.
Yeah, butterflies and angels and things that would harass most corals. Do that in a softy tank and just care less, because softies recover pretty quick, and a lot of them aren't as palatable to those fish anyways. So I feel like it's a good way to, if you want a better balance between fish that you're not supposed to have and still have corals, that's probably the way to go.
Okay, so Dianthus reef, Parazoanthus is the technical name.
Parazoanthus, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's the one. Or yellow star polyps. All three of them seem to be common names for it.
Well, yellow star polyp?
Yeah, that's cute. I googled it and the same thing came up.
Nice.
As well as sun corals, which are NPS and not an easy coral. So those do not count.
No, I like those. Here's a question. Yes. What would you consider a pipe organ?
A pipe organ?
I'm pretty sure they're considered a soft coral. It's not an LPS. I can't see how it could be.
Yeah, they're kind of like a clove polyp in a way in my mind.
Yeah, they're like they're like some weird matting Gargonian, but they create this lattice that just keeps protruding upwards as they grow.
I would put it in the same family as clove polyps.
So we'll call it a softie. Yeah, pipe organ's another really nice coral that I think is super underappreciated. There's a lot of really nice ones, and the funny thing is, like, people think of a pipe organ and they just think of the red skeleton. They don't even realize it's like a star polyp that doesn't destroy your tank.
Yeah,
except for they're kind of prettier. There's one variety that's kind of it's got a green center and green like rays down the polyp with like
Mm-hmm.
white frills, and it is just gorgeous. That's one I would like to get again
Nice.
too, if I can ever find it.
Okay, Josh the box. Fiji leather is Seracophyton.
Yeah,
Seracophyton?
saprophyton, sacrificial.
I'm terrible at pronouncing
saprophyton.
any of these,
It's
just for
okay.
the record.
Me too. I screw things up all the time.
Yeah.
Do you know how long I said chado for? Forever.
Oh, me too. I probably still do. The
Yeah,
funny thing is, I use
periodically.
them interchangeably. Like, I'll use them to whatever one flows better in the sentence. I'll just like throw that one in. Terrible.
That honestly, and you know what? Another one people bug me about is detritus versus
Yeah.
detritus.
Oh yeah.
I say detritus all the time. I don't know why.
Oh yeah. Well, this one makes me laugh because I know it's wrong and I do it every time. Siche, I always say sice.
Sice? I like it.
Because I said
Siche.
it when I was in freshwater. I always use those sinker silent pumps, and I always called it sice. And I know it's Siche, but when I'm just saying it, I say sice. Like people always call me out on it. It makes me laugh because I know better.
It's so funny.
Don't do it.
Did you ever see the post that Siche did? It's like a goat explaining how to say no sisi, no sise, no sichi, it's Siche.
I did. That was pretty funny.
I was like, oh, thanks, man. I needed this.
I know. I was talking to Steve one day. I'm like, sorry, Steve. I'm like, every time.
Steve's amazing. What a good guy.
He's awesome. But yeah, they're just, I don't know. They're such an amazing thing. So soft corals are underappreciated. So get them some love.
Here, I got a question for you.
Yes.
What are the top 5 things you dislike about soft corals?
That I dislike?
Yeah, see, I'm flipping the coin here so that it's not just a one-sided conversation.
There we go, man. All right, so here is a problem and a solution. Soft corals can, if you're doing a mixed reef tank, soft corals can release a toxin, which will slow down the growth of encrusting corals. Now, you can run carbon, which will absorb that and help pull out those toxins, or you can run ozone, which will break down those toxins. So either carbon or ozone is a tool to give you more success in running a mixed reef. Now, if it's softies only, it's probably not an issue, but if you're mixing stuff, then that chemical warfare is a consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good one.
Yep.
You got 4 left, buddy. Keep going.
Okay, what else? They can sting things. So I guess, one, you can cut them back and it's easier to, I guess, tame them in a way. But at the same time, it can come over and start smacking your macros. It could sting it.
They move a lot.
They do.
Yeah. Kind of like how torches, some of them can just expand to a ridiculous degree. Or Galaxia is a really good example of a super aggressive coral. You're right, softies are the same. And another thing on that exact note, if you change the way the flow is in your tank at all, you move a pump, you're trying to optimize somewhere else, the softie will end up moving dramatically as a result because they're so flexible. So if the flow changes the opposite direction, then it just flops to the other side, So yeah, that's a really good point.
Okay. Anemones. One thing that drove me nuts is how they can move. Like, it's cool that they can move. Again, all my complaints are for a mixed reef tank because that's what I always tend to do. But it can be in the same spot for a year. The one day it's like, nope, don't like the spot anymore. I'm going to walk over all your expensive acros. Now, an enemy only tank, not an issue. They don't care. They'll just be buddy-buddy. But if you have a mixed reef tank, then it could potentially sting other corals. And they are a bugger to get off because they plant their foot, usually deep down into some little crevices where it's a bugger to get it to.
I've broken many a rock to remove an anemone.
Do you know
it's not fun.
What actually worked really well? I don't know if I have any to show it. But do you know those little like thermoplastic beads where you put in hot water and you can mold stuff?
Yeah.
So in one of my old tanks, Marine Depot used to sell them, and I had a big container of it. And an anemone, I couldn't get him out because his foot was deep way down in this hole, and I really wanted him out because he kept moving and stinging stuff. So what I did is I built like a big cone funnel out of that putty that was blocking his light, so he'd have to crawl out of his hole to get to the light. And that actually worked really well.
Very smart. So like he'd literally have to crawl up into that tube.
Yeah. So
what'd you do? Just break the tube off and took him out?
Yeah. So it took 2 revisions. So the first time he would come up, but still I tried to get him and his foot was still in there. He just stretched really long. So then I built a second funnel on top of the first funnel and he eventually walked all the way out. Then I just popped it off the rock later once he was out. It worked well though.
That's brilliant, dude. I love that. That's awesome.
It was
that's really smart.
It was a really big arch that I built. I'm like, there's no way I'm breaking this. So I had to get creative.
Yeah. No, that's super smart.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Because they can walk, so make them want to move.
Yeah, exactly. So what's your last thing?
Annoyances of soft corals? or complaints?
Or just, yeah, things you would complain about with softies.
In my earlier days before I knew any better, I got some of those bluey green mushrooms, and they just grew way too fast. They grew like
Yeah.
level fast. So I wouldn't get those again. If for mushrooms, I will only do slow growing ones, unless you want your whole tank to be nothing but mushrooms. So
Yeah.
yeah, having an idea of how fast something grows before you add it to your tank is a good consideration. And if you want lots of variety of coral, don't get ones that grow too fast.
Yeah, they're a bugger because, especially because that's a really good point. They're hard to remove. It's
Yeah.
not like a fast growing, star polyps, it's a mat. You can peel it off.
Yeah.
I mean, it's harder on rock work, but if you got it growing up the back wall, just peel it off.
Easy.
SPS that grow too fast,
Mm-hmm.
like I've got a few that just grow like stink compared to everything else. They can just be broken very easily and removed. But mushrooms, man, when they get everywhere and you're trying to get them out of the tank,
It's tricky.
and if anything you leave behind, just like Aptasia, anything you leave behind of the foot just turns into more mushrooms. Like there are certain softies that will do that. And it makes it very difficult to eradicate them if you decide you made a bad choice.
Yeah.
So making sure they're the kind of coral that you got to make sure in advance that when you put it in, it's not ever going to be a problem. Now, softies are worse for that than any, like you don't get that problem with LPS and SPS the same way you do with softies.
Now, here's a funny consideration. If it's free or $5 or $10, it probably grows like a weed. If it's $50-$60, it's probably a slower grower. So generally the stuff that are invasive, grow fast, people give it away. They sell it super cheap. If it's more expensive, it's because it doesn't produce
slow
as quickly,
growing,
right? So,
or brand new and nobody has very much of it. So I have a feeling, like for instance, that that Avatar Kenya, I have a feeling that's going to be a fairly fast grower.
mm-hmm.
Like back in the day, do you remember the metallic blue Xenia?
Yes, I haven't seen that in a while.
Had like I haven't seen it in forever. Same with the purple Suspicularia.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the blue Xenia was a Suspicularia species anyway. But those who haven't seen in a long time, and they were very expensive corals when I first got mine. I remember I sent like a tiny, if you can imagine, in this 2008, I sent a frag the size of my pinky finger here, this big, to a gentleman in BC. And he paid $70 in 2009 for that coral. I spent $150 in 2009 on a piece of purple Suspicularia. Like it was just a very expensive softie, but you know what? It was not a slow grower.
Really?
It's just, it was brand new. So like nobody really knew about it. It was like purple Suspicularia is a bright purple soft coral with like tan colored pom-poms that look more like white than tan from the top. It was just, So I have a feeling, like the Japanese Limnalia, that is a fast growing soft coral. Still cost me $100 for that frag. Do you know what I mean? Like they're not cheap. So it's either new and there's not a lot of it, or exactly like you said, it's slower growing. So it's less to worry about, but also that makes it less available. So yeah, I think shopping by price a lot of the time is not the worst idea, unless we're talking pallies, because sometimes they just melt for fun. If I buy an expensive pally, it will just melt. That's just for fun.
Okay, so zoanthids or pallies, zoas, I've had the same thing where I had the most expensive freaking one I bought ever one time. It was like speckled crack or grandmaster crack or something like that. It was super cool looking, but it did nothing. It just existed. And it was like so overly priced. And then one day it just melted. It's like...
Yeah, and then utter chaos. Like there's an example of one that looks awesome.
Love it.
Most people can get it to grow like mad, and they were so expensive for a time. I remember like
they were like 30 or $40 a polyp when I originally got it.
Dude, I remember when I first got one, I got it from a buddy of mine who had bought a colony, and the colony price was like, I think he spent $1,000 on it. But at the time, they were selling for $120 a polyp. And he bought like a colony of like 30 or 40 polyps for $1,000, and then he fragged them all off. But he gave me one. I remember I was like, oh, this is sweet. And it grew fast. And then the price tanked, right? But yeah, man.
But those are so one of my faves. They're a beauty. Do you know what? I actually bought an overly priced one the other day. Fruit Loop Zoa. It's like $50 for a frag of them. But I've
Fruit
wanted that.
Loops, they were a deep water zoa, right? They've been around a long time.
Yeah, but they've been on my list for like ages. This one guy had a ton in his tank. This was like 2 years ago. And I was going to trade him for some, but then he's like, oh, my tank crashed and they're all gone. I was like, what? I was like, so I just haven't seen them in so long. So
my tank crashed and they're all gone.
Hoarding them. But
Smog over there just sitting on his pile of Fruit Loops.
I know. But so I finally broke down and bought an overly priced frag of them just because I wanted them.
Worth it. Blue Hornets were like that for a long time, or Purple Hornets or whatever the hell they were.
Any of the Hornets are cool looking.
Rastas.
Yeah.
Which there were like classic 5 iterations of.
I paid
OG Rasta.
Yep. I had, what was it? $10 a polyp I paid for those drones. 20. This is when I first got into the hobby. It was $20 for 2 little dinky heads. Tiniest little frag. Man. But they're such a cool one.
They are. And I mean, I love zoanthids. I've got a small collection, but I've been having issues with them. And again, I couldn't pinpoint what the heck it was, but some dips and some love, and they're all bouncing back. So I got some that are Pikachus because obviously, if nobody knows already, I love Pokemon. Love Pokemon. Yeah. So, and Legends Arceus is coming out in like a week or something, and I'm stoked. Nice. But yeah, so like if you name a coral after a Pokemon, you're basically coercing me into buying it. So don't make it overpriced because I can't afford that crap.
I have to Google the Pikachu Zone now. Oh, that's cool looking.
It's like a yellow green with kind of a light blue center. Mm-hmm. They're super cute. They're a very small polyp. Back in the day, the closest thing I can think of, there used to be a red polyp that was almost the same. It was like a red color with a purpley blue center and just micro size. Reminds me of that, but just slightly different color setup, but same type of.
Yeah. No, they're cool looking. I found a photo. They look nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I also like all the ones that are like wacky colors, but very basic, like Oompa Loompas or Goblins on Fire, whatever the heck they're called. Yep. Those ones I'm a big fan of. Tubbs Blues. Okay. If anybody here remembers like back in the halide days when, you know, we didn't super blue the crap out of our tanks, Tubbs Blues were like the zoa to have because it was one of the zoas that even if you had a 10,000K halide on your tank, just was blue, like blue as all heck. So, and then green people eaters, red people eaters were huge back then. And alien eye zoas, which were just the blue with the green dot in the middle.
Yep.
Man.
Classics, man. Classics. What's your favorite zoa?
Favorite zoa? Jeez. I think one of my favorites is the OGEM or the orange green-eyed monster, which is kind of like a Bowser, Pally, or Candy Apple Red, but like it's super orange. Like it's ridiculous. Yeah. I had a colony of them before. I actually have a single polyp now, hopefully it grows out into a colony again. But that was the brightest orange coral I've ever seen in my life. Like it's a metallic orange color and it's as deep orange as like a really orange colony of some polyps. Like just really cool. But it's hard to pick just one because I also really like mean greens. Like it's an older polyp. Like I haven't seen them around in a long time. And there's a variation of them. The ones I'm talking about had a very big green center with the blue around it. And then it was like just brown after that. But the centers were very large on them compared to what I see these days, but called mean greens. But yeah, there were so many. And the other thing is like zoa gardens are nice, but one big colony of a nice looking zoa planted next to things that other corals that just don't have the same color as them looks jaw dropping.
Yeah, just that vibrant color change is, I don't know,
the contrast. Cool. Yeah. And you can get them in so many different colors. It's really easy to get like a little rock of them or like grow a rock of them and stick it between corals that are a completely different set of colors. So yeah, I know these days everybody makes like a garden of this and a garden of that. And I get it. Like they're fun, but it's just showing off a collection. It's not like staging a reef. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think Michael did a really good job with his reef. I can't remember his last name. Mike. Yep. You know who I'm talking about?
You betcha.
Like I've had him on. Yeah. So he did a really great job of kind of just aquascaping his reef to be a very interesting aquascape and not just a series of gardens. But yeah, and that's something I'm going to try to do with that softy tank and my SPS tank over here is focus less on making like little gardens of everything and try to just
Okay,
think of what I want the reef to look like.
I was just gonna ask, would you do more like just random everywhere, splash of this, splash of that, or do you do whole groups
No.
of stuff like the garden versus?
I have a habit of having like an idea in my mind of what I want something to look like based on growth formation and color. And then I try to find corals that are going to fit the bill. But it doesn't always work like that because obviously I'm human and I make impulse buys of corals that look cool.
Makes sense.
And then I just try to find like the best place for them to go. And I have a habit of rearranging my tanks until they look the way I want them to. So like it could look one way for 2 months and then I start moving pieces around because they're either overgrowing or the shape isn't what I expected. And so it's like an evolution. I rarely glue something down and that's the last place it ever sits. It usually gets glued down like 6 times before I'm like, that's where you belong. And it wasn't always like that. Like I had SPS tanks before, like my 20-gallon SPS reef, I basically just glued crap wherever I thought it might look okay and just let it do whatever it did. And it turned out fine, but it wasn't like a well-planned
That's fair.
aquascape. And I really want to aim for well-planned aquascapes.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm also going back to halides. I don't care if people think they're dead.
Crazy man, stock up on bulbs.
I'm going to. Well, the only way to, there's a massive like ongoing debate between like whether LEDs are better or halides are better. I think the
Better
only
for
way
what?
to just that's the thing. Like I deep down in my heart, I think there's a reason that halides performed so well, and people continue to want to use them. And corals look different under halides. Halide grown corals tend to look different than LED grown corals. This is all like observation and stuff.
Yep.
But I have this idea in my head that my halide tanks were better than my LED tanks. And I want to go back to halides to see if I'm having a memory like issue where I'm just remembering all the good and forgetting all the bad, or if there's some truth to that. Also, I just love the shimmer of halides has not been matched by any LED ever. It's just different. So I have this very romantic idea of halides, and I want to get them back so that I can see if it's been years. It's been the last halide I had was 2008. So I want to see if this romantic idea of halides that I have still is what it has been, or if I'm just like remembering things fondly.
Okay, so I'm gonna say it depends on the coral. I know one guy who has LEDs, T5s, and halides on his tank. He literally puts different corals in different sections of the tank based on where it looks best, where it grows best. So you're gonna have different corals that prefer different things. So this is a big it depends.
Without diving into this, because it's going to be a whole other, we'll do a whole other live stream. But there's no LED fixture on the planet right now for reef tanks that provides the same, let's say, doesn't come close to providing the same amount of or variety of wavelengths that a halide can. Halides go into the UV, although we use glass to make sure we don't get too much of it, because UV is a very dangerous game to play with. Like straight up, when people are like, oh, the UV in LEDs isn't real UV, good. Trust me, that shit is for the professionals. Like, do not screw around with UV over your corals. It's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Violet bands and all that, that's fine.
That's but near UV, it's not true UV.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So halides can produce real UV, but more importantly, they have, and I don't know if you've seen the charts that have been posted of the comparison, but there is a gigantic, and I mean absolutely gigantic amount of red in halides that, and it's far red. We're not talking like, oh, 660 nanometers photosynthesis. We're talking like you can't see it.
Yeah.
And it's not surprising because halides generate a lot of heat.
Yeah.
And heat is just light that we can't freaking see. Like, it's
fair.
It is. You start getting into those high wavelengths, and
Mm-hmm.
you're just the only way to perceive it is as heat, which is why you can get like red diodes,
Yeah.
LEDs in vivarium fixtures,
Mm-hmm.
and they barely look like they're on. But if you put your hand under it, it's
Feel
like
the warmth.
you can feel that it's putting out heat. So it's just the energy that's in it. But yeah, I I don't know if that actually changed anything in terms of corals. I know like chlorophyll D uses, I think, past 700, it's like 710 or something like that.
Mm.
And cyano uses, I think, has chlorophyll D in it, or some species do. All these corals grow in the wild under the sun where those wavelengths exist.
Yeah.
Halides don't even cover everything the sun can do.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes me wonder how much of the light we can't see that's generated by a light fixture like a metal halide, how does that affect not just the corals directly,
Mm-hmm.
but indirectly? How does it affect the phytoplankton population in the tank, the zooplankton population in the tank, the microbiome of the tank? How does light play into all of that?
I have a cheaper idea for you. Get one of those skylight tubes straight down to the tank, and then supplement it with your like blue aquarium lighting, and just use the sun as your halide.
I can't. I'm in the basement. I would have a tube going through the whole house, buddy.
There you go.
Solar tubes, you know what, funny enough, like back in the day, I really wanted to try solar tubes. Like I
Mhm.
really, really, really did. And I saw some tanks that had done it, but like you can't control it. Like
Yeah.
you have a cloudy day, it's a cloudy day. And I'm in the wrong part of the world
Fair.
to be dicking with the sun. I'm not in the tropics. I'm not going to get tropic sun here.
Fair.
But no, I want to return to halides just to see, you know, what it looks like. And I'm not banning LEDs from the party. I'm gonna have reef brights on there too.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but I just want to see if those other wavelengths do anything.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, let me know
So
when you find out.
also, it'll be never. It's all going to be observation until I can get like. So what I am going to do is I'm going to be testing the microbiome like before I
Yeah.
switch over to the new tank and there's halides and everything.
Yeah.
And then I'll try testing it well after and see if anything changes. And you know, I may go halides for a year, see how things go, and then switch back to LEDs. I like LED. I've been using LED since Gen 1, since the Solaris, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So, and I'll never argue with anybody that LEDs grow coral. They obviously grow coral. We've been doing it for so long.
It's the only
LEDs
thing
are
I
great
use
for
is
growing
LEDs.
coral.
Yep.
Yeah, it's great for growing coral. So anybody being like, you have to use halides is wrong. And anybody who's saying you have to use LED is wrong. It's just, I want to know what the difference is. And I actually just prefer the shimmer of a halide. I think, like I said, it's been a long time.
That's fair.
So we'll see. And also, I'm going 14,000 Kelvin, not 20K.
Yeah. You're going for the more daylight white.
Yeah, well, partially because I film in here and it's on camera all the time. So if I can turn the blue LEDs off and then just use the 14,000 Kelvin, it's going to look better on camera too. And then I'm not like going into my phone and changing the spectrum and being like, oh, look, which is a great feature to be able to do. Like to be able to go in and be like, go whites, I got to be on camera today.
So,
but yeah.
if anyone, I actually really like the crispy white look when you still get that color pop. If anyone else is using my Radeon schedule from noon to 4 p.m., it's very like crispy white, but you still get the vibrance. I love it. That's like the favorite part of my schedule.
Yeah, actually, that's why I love the setup that you've now got on the frag tank, right? That I twisted your arm into trying. I run the Radeons like with all channels 100%, and then just change the intensity, and then use that for the color pop, and it's just this crispy white tank, but all of the color pop on the planet.
Yeah.
That's the best way, because the fish look, in my opinion, my humble opinion, fish look better under white light.
Yeah, they do.
Some blue for sure, but if it's just blue heavy, your clown doesn't look orange. It looks like.
I was thinking the same thing the other day, even with like the blues on, like the hawkfish. He just looked like a bland purple splotch, you know. Where in the daytime he's like vibrant red, like
exactly. Yeah.
So it makes a big difference.
we lose a lot of nice color from. And some fish look like amazing under blue light. Some do, but not all of them.
Most look better in the lighter spectrums.
Yeah. Well, their pigment is chromatic. It's not fluorescent. So
yeah,
if you try to make them fluoresce with blue light, like it's just work.
They just don't glow like that.
I wish they did.
I don't know. So,
but soft corals.
But soft coral. So on that note,
Yeah.
because I've had this photo sitting below for a while. So a big thing for me with soft corals, like ignore the acro on the top, but the bottom, there's utter chaos, and then I have like the kryptonite bounce beside it. And a big thing for me when I'm placing corals is consideration of the color palette. They'll put like opposing colors of the color wheel. So right there's like that bright orangey right beside the bright green. So each one will make the other color pop more because it's contrast. Or if you put an orange and a red one side by side, they'll kind of like blend from one to the next and kind of fade in, rather than each one being like in your face more. So
I have a challenge for you now.
Yes.
You have to make a rainbow tank where you start at red on one end and then just put coral colors that fade all the way through the rainbow until you end up at violet on the other end.
If this works and it rids those purple clove polyps, not the whole tank, but I will pick a rock and turn into a rainbow with zoas.
Okay? I look forward to seeing that, buddy. I really do. Yeah. That's going to be fun.
If this works. And if it kills all my zoas, then I make no promises. But I really hope this works. I've heard it can. I've read theories about it from many years ago on old things, and I'm really going to hope it works. This was overly priced to get it, so hopefully it's good. The funny thing is, this is like 30 capsules, and I need one. But it was the only one that was like 99% pure. All the cheap ones were like 20%. The benzene.
Oh, that's no good.
I spent like $50 on this.
So you got to auction off the rest of them.
Yeah,
you have lifetime supply.
It is. But yeah, I'm gonna do a rainbow rock. I think that would be cool if it works. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
I think it'll be nice.
Yep.
I might try to do something similar, but with stag style SPS, like branching SPS.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make. I think in the new scape, I'll probably make a arch between the two rock structures. I'm going to add some rock because I'm getting a foot of extra tank. So I'm going to spread them a little further apart. I might bridge them. And if I do, I'll see if I can get like a series of staghorn type SPS or acros that go from like a reddish color. I might have to try like a red millipora and then go, or I bet you it's probably prostrata, but either way, like aquapora, millipora, prostrata in red, and then do all the same, but going to like the purple on the other end. Purple, blue, maybe like a sunset, and then a red, 4 of them. That'll look pretty good.
That'd be good. Random update. My nudie babies are still doing fabulous, and this is the easiest project I've ever done because I literally just throw an aptation every 4 or 5 days, and I have tons of them in there.
I gotta get some from you at some point.
This is literally like the first time I tried to like breed them was overly complicated. This time I threw some eggs in a jar and added adaptation, forgot about it for like a month, and when I'm like, oh look, there's babies in there, and I like do a tiny water change or something. That's it. Easiest thing ever. I don't know why they're so expensive for how easy they are, but. And I basically ran out of aptasia here. There's a few of my sumps, so I like give them a ration every like once they're fully done. I'm like, pop another one in there.
Nice. It's funny. Sometimes you overcomplicate something, and it makes it impossible to accomplish.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Simpler is better. There you go. Red dragon. Jake has a good red dragon. It goes like red dragon acro. I have that one.
I have as well.
It grows awesome in my water box.
Mine hasn't taken off yet, but c'est la vie. The last time I had one, it grew pretty quick. I actually have a purple dragon coming, and I'm curious to see how different they are.
It's not kind of extreme. There's a different. It's just like a darker version of it. That one I lost it, but it wasn't a huge difference between like the red and the purple. It was just like a few hues, shades darker.
Yeah, that's kind of how I perceived it. But I figured I'd stick those two, not together, but close together, like same part of the same side of the tank, but just maybe separate them by a couple of corals.
Yeah, something in the middle just to split it up.
Yeah,
so it'd be good. What else? Is there any other softy category corals that we haven't touched on?
We've done zoas, mushrooms, sakura, phyton. We touched on some podium, xenids, including the purple stuff that I haven't seen in years.
Yeah.
Star polyps, Gargonians. I don't know. Is there anything we touched on? Anemones?
Enemies are good.
What are we missing? There's got to be something.
I know.
We're not geniuses.
I'm scrolling through my Instagram just seeing if there's anything that I've had that we haven't talked about yet.
Would you consider sponges to be soft corals?
Kind of. I don't know if they're coral or not, but they kind of are.
I was thinking about that earlier when I was in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm. So sponges are they're kind of like a coral. Like, actually, I would say yes, because have you seen those spider sponges that are not sheep and red and white? Those are cool.
And then well, that's a sponge that has some sort of symbiotic relationship with a polyp. So it's kind of both.
Mm-hmm. So they're super cool. I have never personally kept one. I heard they can be a bit harder to keep.
Me too. I haven't tried them.
They're cool. They're pretty.
I've heard that people have had a lot of success with the blue sponges. There's some form of blue sponge. I wish I knew where it was from. I wish I had more information, but I come woefully unprepared.
I had actually.
And that they're, keeping them and they're doing well. That's something I'd be super interested in trying. But also not confident. I know Jake Adams has spoken about how sponges can be a pest, especially white sponges and that yellow sponge and stuff that grows in between corals and can be a bit of a pain in the butt. But I don't know if that also applies to those ornamental blue sponges. I don't know what their growth habits are like.
So the trade-off is sponges will help filter your water. So they definitely have a benefit, right? But some of them will grow over top of corals, and then that's where they become a pain. Now, the plus side is they're easy to pull out. So, I mean, if you can maintain the leather, maintain sponge, usually isn't hard because they're not very tough at sticking and stuff. So they're usually fairly easy to just rip it out.
Is there not a parasitic yellow sponge that like destroys LPS, especially might not be Euphilia, but octobubble or frog spawn and whatever the heck they were classified as?
Wouldn't surprise me. Oh, just because I found it. That was the most overly priced Zoa I've ever bought that melted away. The Grandmaster Cracks.
Oh, geez. Would you spend $300 on it?
And I got a wicked deal on it. They were like half price or something. So that's why I bought them. But they're still overly priced. And then...
Yeah, they melted.
They were fine for like a month or two. And then one day, I'm like, where'd they go?
Man.
Yep.
I don't know. Those mysterious melters. I always wonder what causes it.
Ooh. There is a really cool sponge that grows like a plate coral.
Oh, yeah.
What's it called?
I have no idea.
I'm just Googling it. So, check out this guy. Sorry, Thomas, you can't see. So there is a type of sponge that literally looks like a plate coral. Yeah, purple plating sponge. So...
I'll take it.
Whoops, I didn't. But anyways,
no.
So it's super cool looking, and it would be like basically a plate coral that's like no effort because of the sponge. So super cool. That's one thing that I think would be cool to have in a softy tank because it gives you that different texture, and it's just easy.
I think the only consideration with sponges is making sure you have enough silica in the water. So I think you'd have to dose silica.
Possibly. I mean, they have products like sponge power and different stuff, right? And that's probably what's in it.
I think Brightwell's got a sponge.
Pretty sure they got one.
Additive.
Sponge
itself. I feel like we don't. It's kind of like sponges right now are what NPS corals used to be. Like they're still mysterious enough that we don't really have enough hands-on practical care to really like share the winning recipe for how to keep them alive and happy. But man, that would be so cool.
All right, so just found it. So the Brightwell Sponge Excel, which is basically like a silicate supplement. So if you are doing lots of sponges, something like that would be a good way to go because it's basically going to make sure they're not deprived of it, which makes them happy long term. But yeah, I don't know. I want the plating sponge one day. I haven't seen it for sale, although my Google image came with Jail Aquatics, which is in Canada, so I'll see if they have it next time I end up there.
Oh, dude, if you do try it, you got to tell me how that goes. Like, I want to see that thing thrive.
I will. Sounds good, man. But yeah, it's just super cool, super easy. Looks like a plate coral. What else we got? I think That's all I got for soft corals so far. There's
I
probably
think
more
we've
though.
covered most of it.
We covered the all-stars at least. There's probably some remote weird ones out there. So if you guys have any that we didn't touch on that you keep, let me know. What do you think when people say like softies, like dirty water versus clean water? In my mind, that just means higher nutrients. But
I agree for the most part. I think, especially like when we're talking about those weird yellow polyps I was talking about earlier, like the fact that people who kept them in tanks that were like physically filthy looking, you know, I don't mean like cyano everywhere and stuff, but like not super polished water, pieces of, you know, particulates floating around and stuff. I think it really comes down to how that particular coral captures food and or the actual conditions of the water in terms of phosphate, nitrate, you know, just free organics in the water. So dirty, I don't think is probably the word I would use, but
nutrient rich.
Maybe I was just going to say nutrient rich. Definitely, they can tolerate way more nutrients than an SPS or LPS tank typically can. I've seen some like high nitrates and phosphate levels. Like you'll see like a big leather coral, like a toadstool leather, just gigantic, open polyps. It could be in a tank filled with cyano and algae, and it wouldn't give two farts. Like it just, they're okay with it. They probably grow faster with elevated nutrient levels. But dirty is probably not the right word.
No, it's not. It's just the one I've probably heard used.
Oh yeah, every time. Yeah, that's the general way it's said. Dirty tanks.
Feather dusters. Ooh, do those count?
No, that's a worm, man.
All right, fair. I guess it is.
That's a worm.
It's a creature, not a coral. It is. It's
that's an invertebrate.
Yeah, same with cocoa worms. They're cool. They're pretty easy too. They just filter feed. As long as you have any type of particle fluid in the water, you know, aka not dirty, nutrient tank, they'll be happy campers.
I think they're a really good candidate for like a soft coral tank where you're going to allow there to be a lot more particulates and stuff in the water. I would love to do like a big Hawaiian feather duster and cocoa worms. I haven't seen it forever. Oh, Christmas tree worms on Parades rocks. I miss those.
Oh yeah, those are cool.
They used to come in all the time, like a big rock with like yellow or green parades and just filled with Christmas tree worms.
That would be cool. Okay, Aussie Dan, can we touch on bubble tips? How long before they can be introduced into a tank? Do you think that it matters that you need an age tank for an enemy? I've never bought into this. I've heard it. I never understood why. But
here's the thing. I can't speak in absolutes, but I've kept a lot of bubble tip anemones, like a lot. I've kept sea bay anemones, carpet anemones, all kinds. I've never had a magnifica yet. Maybe one day. But I will tell you right now, I've never had a bubble tip anemone fail because of the age of the tank. Never. I've set up brand new tanks with an old piece of rock and put a bubble tip in right away. I did a 20-gallon bubble tip only tank with a colony of pink stripe skunk clowns because I freaking love them. Pink skunk clownfish. Woo! And they grew like crazy and split like crazy. Every time I did a water change, I ended up with like 6 more anemones. It was crazy. Every time. I did big water changes, right? 20-gallon tank. I did a 5-gallon pail, 25%. But no, I don't think you need an age tank. I think people underestimate how much effort goes into keeping an anemone if your tank doesn't already have a lot of particulates and stuff floating around, or you're not power feeding because it's full of fish. You got to feed them, man. They do fine. Like they photosynthesize. You want good light over them. They'll look great. They'll
give it a little mysis a couple times a week. It'll be happy. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all you got to do.
I don't think you need to worry about the tank being aged. I don't think they're particularly finicky about the biome and where it's at. Like SPS are, they just freaking fail on me if the tank's too young. That might just be how we do it in North America, because I hear European tanks, they just like pack full of SPS and stuff right away and they're just fine. But like, so who knows? But
okay. So in my mind, cycling is for the fish, not for the coral. As long as your if we're talking harder corals like acros and crusters, as long as your elk, your pH, like all the basics, the main things are stable, you can throw them in right away. I would not hesitate one bit to throw in softies, zoas, mushrooms, leathers into a fresh cycle tank. Even while cycling, they probably will not care.
Yeah, forget cycling. I literally, like, straight
water,
up. Yeah. Fresh salt water, the right temperature, throw soft corals in, whatever piece of rock they're on is going to be enough of whatever filtration they need, and just they'll do fine. Like, they will actually do fine. You'll have to dose nitrates and phosphates and stuff because there will be zero in the water, especially if you don't have fish. But like, you can set up a frag tank, fill it, and it's ready to go. You know what I mean? Like, you don't gotta go crazy.
Exactly. I've told the story a few times, but back in the day before I upgraded to my big tank, I had my nano and I bought a green slimer and some other one, but it was like a decent sized chunk and it was too big to fit in my tank. So it lived in a 5-gallon bucket with like a power head and an XR15 above it and a heater for like a month. No problem. Perfectly fine. That's basically as vanilla of a tank as you can get. So as long as things are stable, it is fine. Now, if you're cycling a tank and you got a bunch of fish right away, the nutrient swings are what's going to annoy acros. So that's generally why you don't want to put in encrusters into a brand new tank. But soft corals, they don't care.
I have a feeling, and it's unsubstantiated as of yet, but I have a feeling that the ebb and flow of the microbiome in a newer system really pisses off SPS.
I would agree.
Yeah, like something about it, like there's no reason why my tanks like 8 months ago should have been any different than it was when I, added acros and stuff, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago. Everything should have been fine. All my levels are the same. Everything I can test for is the same. The only difference is the tank wasn't as old, and I went through a couple different algae blooms, green algae. I've had some rusty algae. Nothing I can see that should have been like, oh yeah, that's going to kill the SPS. Something about the ebb and flow of different bacterial colonies in the tank, some of them being maybe irritants or more aggressive. And yeah, I don't know. But you skip that part and just throw coral into like fresh salt water in a bucket with a power head and a heater. And for some reason, they just do all right.
Yeah. Especially for soft corals.
Oh, soft corals they don't care. I would throw star polyps or any leather coral into a brand new tank with fish. And
star
polyps. If you kill it, you're talented. You got to screw up hard.
There was, I think it was Paul, one of the UK guys, and he had a bucket. I don't remember what the coral was, but it was a bucket of like salt water, like water change water, that was left outside and like frozen, and it was still alive in this bucket. It's just like, yep.
Oh,
I remember what type of coral it was, but it made me laugh when I saw that.
Okay, here's a testament to how resilient soft corals can be. Not all of them, but specifically zoanthids and that symposium. I received a shipment that got held today, and when I got it, everything was dead. LPS, SPS, everything was dead. But those two corals, the water was 53 degrees Fahrenheit. It was like cold to the touch. And I don't know how long they'd been in there. A long time. Like everything else was dead as a doornail. But those stuck them in the tank because they weren't like rotting and falling apart. And they opened up within like 48 hours.
Nice.
53 degrees Fahrenheit. I cannot tell you.
Cold. Really?
Oh my.
It's not frozen, but it's cold.
No, it's cold. Like that, corals die. Think about it. That's more than 20 degrees lower than it's supposed to be. Fahrenheit, 20 degrees. Can you imagine dropping 20 degrees Fahrenheit like in your tank? I cannot think of an SPS that would survive that.
Oh, they'd be.
It's not going to happen. But yeah, no, they just don't care.
That's true. That's why they're hardy. That's why they're nice, good, easy, low stress corals for your tank.
Yeah. Yeah. If you like to go on vacations, don't get an SPS tank. You'll be on vacation sweating bullets, not because it's nice and hot out, but because you're so dang worried.
Yeah, your softy tank, you're like, yeah, that'll be fine.
Yeah. And if I didn't work from home, I'm not sure I would do SPS. Like, honestly, I've had 4 power outages this.
Oh, you had one like
this year,
like last week.
Dude, I had 2 in the last month. 2. But I'm home. So like, I just start counting and I'm like, well, power's still out. It's been an hour, the tank's gonna start getting cold. I just run out, get the generator started. I've got it like hook it up to the house, run into the breaker box, flip everything off except for the tank, the refrigerator,
Mhm.
and I think that's usually it. Um, and I'm fine. But that's because I'm here. I can't go on vacation in the winter. My
Mhm.
tank will die. Like 100%, the power will go out. Nobody will be here to turn anything on or start a generator. I'll
Yep.
come back to the cloudy tank full of deceased stuff
Dang.
and hurt feelings.
Need one of those whole home generators with all those power outages.
Right?
Yeah. Auto transfer
I could.
switch done.
They're so expensive, dude.
I know. I know. I looked at them and then I was like, okay, it's like 10 grand probably.
Exactly. Yeah.
Too
What
much.
what brand? Suzuki, Kawasaki? There's a
Uh,
whole bunch of different ones.
Generac maybe? I don't know. I was
Generac, yeah.
I was on this whole quest for generators for a while, and then I just did my solar battery back. I'm like, yeah, good enough for now. But
Yeah,
I
that's
don't have
fine.
that many power outages, so I'm reasonably low risk here.
Dude, I get like at this rate, I think I'm averaging 5 or 6 a year.
Yeah, that's a good chunk.
They're usually not very long. Like
Hmm.
sometimes they're just 10 minutes, but
Yeah.
like in the winter, we get storms, it gets knocked out for a bit. And so I have a 10,000 watt King Canada, I think it is, generator.
Hmm.
And I just take that out, fire it up. I got the Generlink for the house, so I can plug it right in. And
Yep. There
uh,
is one at Costco that's tri-fuel, so it can take gas, propane, or natural gas. And I keep seeing
wow.
it. And one day when it's on sale, I'll buy it. But because then I could just take the barbecue line and plug it in. I'd never have to fill the gas. I mean, that's
Oh, dude, that'd
one
be
day I'm gonna
awesome.
get that for like the tank safety backup eventually. But
Yeah. If I didn't also have like a gas mower and stuff, like I'd probably be less thrilled with having gas cans around
yeah,
because if you don't use it, it eventually is not going to be very good to
yeah,
throw through a machine, right?
yeah.
And also, the other thing that kind of sucks is you should really use premium fuel in
Really?
those things so you don't have to clean them out as often.
Hmm,
Yeah, they're
that's
small
fair.
motors, small engines. You use high octane fuel and maintenance drops
Hmm,
off, or at least that's what I'm told by everybody. Like I'm new
good to
to
know.
the rural lifestyle, but
Yeah.
that's what I've been told by everybody. So that's what I do. So yeah, I would hate for that fuel to go bad. I would like kick myself so
Well,
hard.
the other consideration, it doesn't go bad. Bad, it just loses octane. So if you buy the really high octane, technically it should last longer.
Yay!
In
There you go.
theory.
See, I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
I'm a noob when it comes to that kind of stuff.
And there's like fuel
But
stabilizers you can add and whatnot, but
yeah,
or
yeah.
just like cycle through once in a while.
Well, I end up burning through everything that doesn't get burned up during the winter in the generator, which I don't go through all of it. I keep like I don't know, 10 gallons of gas around. Probably more actually.
Hmm.
I use it in the spring in the lawnmower anyway. I have a lot of lawn to mow.
Yep. Crazy. Excited about starting my battery project. Yeah. Battery if you have nothing else, you should have a battery backup for your power heads.
Absolutely. At least one power head in the tank.
Yeah.
One power head in the tank. One anything that moves water in the tank moving, and you're okay. Actually, funny enough, before if I was too lazy to get the generator out,
Hmm.
like I would just go grab one of the battery backup air pumps that I've got because I got a couple of them, and I'll just throw one of those on the tank. But I don't know if you do this, Devin, but I keep like convincing people to get into aquatics. Like my
Oh yeah,
neighbor has
always.
2 tanks now.
Yeah.
They're freshwater, but I just keep convincing everybody around me. But I'm also like super open-handed. So like we had a power outage and he didn't have the kind of generator that you could hook to the house and flip like the breakers.
Hmm.
So I just gave him one of the air pumps, and so I don't have them anymore. But even just an air pump breaking the surface of the water is enough to like keep the oxygen from diving.
As
You
long
know
as
what I
your
mean?
tank is not overstocked. Now that's another consideration. If you have a ton of fish, they're gonna suck up your oxygen much, much quicker.
Crazy
If your
fast.
tank is low stocked, they're gonna last a long time, right? So if you know that you're somewhere where you have frequent power outages, not overstocking your tank is also can go a long way.
Yeah, I would say I'm not overstocked at all.
So far,
The
so
other thing is it's like one air pump per, I think, 2 feet of tank. So if you got a 4 foot tank, you can't just use one, you have to use two.
good.
6 foot, you're at least into three. And I'm sure we could also get into like width. So if it's like more than 18 inches wide, you should have an extra one for every. But yeah, at some point it gets ridiculous. I don't know if
Yep.
you can tell, but I usually stick to smaller tanks
Yeah.
So I can get away with an air pump most of the time.
That's fair. Battery backup for me, then power heads,
Yeah.
you got flow, you're golden. All right, we were totally off topic, but important information. So hopefully we inspired somebody to.
It's still on topic.
That's
Softy tanks care less. That's, I think the whole point was they'll survive. They're more likely to survive a power outage.
Oh, so good, so good. Oh, I love it. So when are you getting? So your other tank is in the other room. The one behind you. When's that baby getting filled?
This one?
Yeah.
I guess when I get off my lazy butt and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So like I got to set up some sort of rock work for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to sit down. I haven't really thought about how I want the rock work to look in the tank, mostly because like these corals are going to grow big and fast, and the ones I already have are going to take up half the tank as it is.
Yep.
So I can't really decide how I want to do the rock work. But once I get the rock work figured out, I'm filling it up. Like I'll just glue the rocks together,
Mm-hmm.
get them in the tank, fill it with fresh salt water. I've got the Aquaforest bio sand.
Yep.
With a couple of little bottles there, so I'll just dump those in. And I've got a piece of rock baking in my other tank, so I'll just chuck that over as well with
Nice.
probably the Japanese limnalia, which is stuck to it because I had to move it because it got too big.
Yep.
Yeah, and that'll kick things off. And then I'm gonna change the light. It came with. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna put the. This is so overkill, but I'll probably end up putting the sky on it.
Yeah.
It's here. Yeah, and I like the fact that as the photo setting in the app, I could just flip it really quick when we're going to do a shoot, and then it'll look right on camera, which is nice. And it'll also minimize the amount of shimmer that comes out of the tank onto the ceiling and stuff. Which when you got to think about all kinds of weird stuff when you film for a living. Like
I have a live stream mode that I push to turn on the radios behind me so it goes to white so it doesn't mess with my green screen behind me.
Green screen, exactly. Like all these silly things you don't normally think about. So I might switch over the light. I might not even do that right away, but I'm intending to. And also I want a whiter appearing light just generally for soft corals. I feel like it tends to look a little bit nicer.
Yeah. Nice.
Because otherwise you lose the pinks, right? Like the fleshy tones and the leathers and stuff. I want to see that. I want to see the contrast of whatever their color is with that fleshy base. So if it's just super blue, it basically gets washed out and then you just have that one color. So I'm going to try to balance it out.
Nice.
But yeah, I would suspect I'd probably have it running in the next 3 weeks. I know that sounds like a lot of people are like, how could you wait that long? I got a lot of stuff to do. Like I'm constantly trying to stay ahead of myself here. But
do you just have one other tank right now, or do you have multiple tanks right now?
Just the one.
Just the one?
I have an axolotl as well upstairs in my kids' room, but that's it. Like that's the only other aquarium. So it's just the 300XL, Reefer 300XL. And then when this is running, it'll be the second tank. I think I'm going to end up with more tanks because Kyle Elder said he's still planning to do those Pokemon tanks. So we got to do that. Exactly. I can't. No, that's something that's been in the works for so long. Like I can't wait for that to come to fruition. But that'll probably be those tanks or tank will be the last. I don't know what the plan is, but that'll probably be the last tank I put in here. I don't want to run too many tanks. Otherwise I get like overwhelmed. Yeah. And then I'm like, which one am I going to shut down? Because I'm tired of taking care of so many tanks.
Two is a nice happy number.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I find.
But the soft coral tank's going to be so easy that I'm not too worried about it. So the SPS tank and then like the mixed reef and then the Pokemon tank will probably be a mirror of whatever this tank is. So it won't be too bad. I'll just have to ration the water changes. As long as I'm not doing like 3 vastly different systems with vastly different care requirements, I'm usually pretty good.
They're all similar-ish.
But if I end up with like a seahorse tank and then like a soft coral system, well, they're so easy, it doesn't matter. But if I do like an LPS specific system and then an SPS specific system and then like a predator tank, I'll start shutting tanks down because it's too much weighs on my mind and then I can't think about anything else. I have ADHD for people who don't know. And I have right?
I know.
So I have a really hard time sometimes with just things floating around in the background, making it impossible for me to like get anything productive done outside. So if I have too many tanks, my brain in the background is just whipping around the ideas
Let's
of what
do
I
a
have
tank.
to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, this needs to get done and this needs to get done. So yeah, I got to minimize that stuff or I'll just lose my mind.
That's fair. I understand you on that one.
Yep.
Yep. Beauty. Okay. One last question in the chat. Christian, what's the most important tool in your arsenal? This is a very wide open question.
Damn, me.
Yeah.
Dude, hands down, just your own knowledge base and of reefing and being able to apply it to your tank and what you know about your tank, like because you can do this hobby in so many different ways. Like it's not one specific light. I've used so many different lights at this point, and you know how many lights I've used that didn't grow coral? This many.
Yeah.
If it's meant to grow coral, it's going to. I'm not saying they all perform the same, but they'll work.
The
So
coral will survive.
yeah,
It might
so
not
like
thrive
no,
or grow crazy, but it will
yeah,
be there.
and this comes right back to like that thing we were talking about earlier about having too much equipment and not like you can't buy success in this hobby. You can't, not unless you're paying somebody who knows and then they're your tool, right?
Yep.
If they're taking care of the tank, that's the only way you can buy success. So yeah, man, like you are your best tool, and the elbow grease you put into your tank and the time you spend getting to know your tank and your tank's habits. Like I can walk into my room on the other side there and my green digitata is my canary in the coal mine. For whatever reason, that coral will get pissed off first before anything else. And I got to the point right now where I dose phosphate and nitrate, eyeballing it. And I'm not recommending anybody does that, but I can look at my SPS in that tank and I can tell when they'll start getting just a hint pale and I'll be like phosphate dropped and I'll just squirt in the tropic marin. Funny enough, I'm using the plus NP, which is technically for carbon dosing.
Yeah.
But I'll just give it a squirt and I know I'm getting the levels up to roughly where they need to be. And every once in a while, usually once a week or every 2 weeks, I'll test my phosphate just to make sure I'm where I should be because I don't trust myself that much. And I'm right there. So I'm good. Like same with salt. Like I know with the cup I have, how much salt goes into a 5-gallon pail to hit 1.026. And I will generally hit 1.026. Sometimes I'm 2.5 and I'll have to add a smidge. I haven't gone over because I tend to be a little bit cautious with, I tend to be light-handed versus heavy-handed. Yeah. But yeah, you are your best tool. Like you are the most important thing.
The more you do it, the more you learn, the more intuitive it is. And
yeah, absolutely. There's just too much equipment and too much, and I don't mean don't use equipment, don't buy equipment, don't lean into it. Like I lean into it. I love it.
100% gear junkie here. Like I love it. And I know I have too much stuff in my tank, but I love automating. Basically, you need it? No. But it could automate a task that you're manually doing.
Yeah. So but how well would that stuff work if you didn't know what you were doing?
You have to know what it's replacing of you, right? To an extent.
Exactly. You're just getting it to pick up your slack, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that you can do less, but you're telling it, this is what I need you to do.
Yeah.
And you're backing off. So yeah, no, there's a huge, like, there's definitely a place for all this crazy gear and I geek out on it day in and day out. That's why I love doing the spotlight part of my job. Dude, it's so much fun. And because I've been around for so long and seen so much equipment and watched it all evolve, like I get tickled every time something new comes out and it's doing something like innovating on something that has already existed. Or even if it's as simple as like Reef Breeders is really good at this, having a really good, like a really well-priced piece of gear. So it's more in that mid-tier or entry-level price range, but still works well and is reliable. Like that I absolutely love. I've got the Aquamax prism lights coming.
Oh yeah, nice.
Like you'd think for a guy who's got like his pick of lights on the planet, I asked to get those because they're in a price bracket. They're in a price bracket that is just very exciting because new people coming into the hobby can look at those lights, and if that's going to sustain soft corals, you know, and do a good job of it, that's the light I would recommend. If you want to do a low budget tank, I don't think everybody has to blow tons of money to have a reef tank. That's, I mean, what a lot of people want to preach because
if you're going for a nice easy softy tank, you do not need all this fancy stuff.
Yeah,
it depends on the type of tank you want too, right? Like lots of things you don't need, but they're nice to have. Do you need it? No. Nice? Yeah. Need? No. So.
ATO is a great example.
Yeah.
Do you need it? No. Is it nice to have? Yes. God, fill a tank. Like if you top up a tank by hand for like 2 weeks, you will buy an ATO.
I've been doing it for like 3 weeks now in the Zoa tank beside me. I like checked the cylinder today, it was up to like 40. I'm like, oh, or 30 or whatever. I'm like, dumping a bunch of pitcher of water into it. Like, good thing it's only Zoas in there, but yeah.
My God, that is, ATOs were such a lifesaver. Honestly, I remember when the JBJ first came out, and it was expensive at the time. Like it was $100 or whatever, and that's the 2000 whatever the heck it was, 4 or 5. Nah, it was probably after that, 2006. I don't know, but that was huge. Like that was a really big deal. Now it's just everybody's got an ATO and they don't know the struggle like we did.
The good old days.
Yeah. I'm curious. What's yours? You can't use mine because I already said.
We just covered everything.
Kind of.
Question.
Should I not cop out and just pick an actual piece of equipment? Should I do that too? Because I feel like
if you could, yeah. What is your essential piece of equipment? Like, what would you not run a tank without?
What would I not run a tank without?
Yeah.
What would I not run a tank without? Jeez, that's a good question. Well, with the exception of like the lighting and your wave pumps and stuff, like all the basic gear, like what tertiary piece of gear would I would not run a tank without a par meter anymore.
Really?
Having had one, I don't want to guess. It's funny because once you have a par meter and you start using one, you realize it's not just for setting up your lights.
Yeah. No,
if you move a coral, when I move corals around and I want to know, okay, I'm taking you're happy here, but I don't want you here anymore. I got to figure out, like, am I about to give you way more light than you just had? And I'm going to get you to bleach. With SPS, this can be a massive pain in the butt. Softies, they survive. Like you could bleach a softie and then drop it down into the back of the tank and it just like comes back to life over 3 weeks. But like with SPS, a great example is, I don't know if it's Ponape or Ponape, whatever. The Ponape bird's nest, Ponape, there you go, whatever. Bird's nest, I will bleach it categorically if I don't use a par meter because they are not a highlight SPS coral.
That one looks way better in low light. It's way more.
That is a low light, and you would not expect it.
Yeah.
Right? It's a bright bird's nest. Pink bird's nest, you could drown in light, and they seem to not care. They'll soak it up. That coral, you put it in too much light, and it will just. So. I use the par meter anytime I move things around. I use a par meter if I'm setting up a new light. I use a par meter if I'm changing settings on my light. I use, and the thing is, like, if you get the par meter, if it's $300, whatever it is, it's not cheap. And I totally get why people don't go, buying lights, I'm buying a par meter to go with it. But the thing is, you overlight your tank and kill 3 corals and you bought your par meter.
Sure.
Right? You save yourself a world of dicking around with your light. You save yourself from setting up the light. Look, no matter how you look at it, even if you set it up based on like Randy settings, like all the BRS investigates, which is a phenomenal tool, especially for people trying to dial in their light without a par meter.
It'll get you in the ballpark, right?
In the ballpark. And that's the key thing. But everybody's tank's different. Everybody's goals are different. Everybody's rock work's different. Like, you don't actually know. You're just getting within, your best educated guess for that light.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. This is where it gets tricky. If corals aren't doing as well as you expected, and you're testing and you can't really find the problem, where are you going to go first?
Yeah. Well,
I wonder if my light settings are right. How many times do you see people being like, oh, what are your light settings? What are your light settings? What are your light settings? Here's the thing. Just because somebody's corals look awesome in their tank, what light they're using and what settings they're using aren't the only reason. In fact, they're probably not the reason the corals look like that.
Well, is your salinity off? Are you having elk swings? Is your pH tank? Like,
how new's the tank?
Lighting's only one corner of the triangle, right? You got lighting, you have flow, and then you have your parameters, basically. And all 3 of those have to be in happy zones and stable for things to be happy and thriving.
There's also a missing leg that you don't see, which is pollutants.
This is true. And
magnets. Did somebody walk by your tank while they were putting on perfume? You don't know what the frig happened. But the point is, if you can't rule out lighting, categorically just be like, it's not lighting.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to start screwing with your lighting because it always happens, especially with newer reefers. They dick with their lighting settings all the time. And I know because I used to do it. When I first got a Radion, I screwed with that thing all the time. And let me tell you, it did not help.
Set it and forget it.
Yeah. But if you have a par meter out of the gate and you set up your lights with your par meter and you map your tank with your par meter, you don't ever have to ask yourself if it's your light, ever. You know it's not your light. It's not the light. So you've immediately eliminated that and you stop screwing with it. If you know what those settings are and everything's good, you have no reason to touch the light again.
Yeah. No.
So it is so it's just so underutilized. And I think it's because of the entry level price. And I know the MQ 210X says not for use with LEDs. Do you know what I used for the first forever? It's not far off enough that you're going to kill your coral.
You'll be in the ballpark.
Yes. And in the ballpark, matter of factly, not in the ballpark, I hope, because those settings.
Isn't like 10 or 15% off? Like it's still,
we're talking maybe like 5%.
Yeah, it'll still be fine. And it's like a third of the price.
Exactly. Well, it's 45% less.
There you go.
Yeah. So perfect. I think it's $333 US or something versus like 530. It's like 373 versus 538 or something like that.
Okay.
I was just looking at them, which is why I'm bringing this up. But yeah, I think more people should really consider a par meter to be like an essential piece of gear. And I would rather, this is going to be good. People are going to think this is funny. I would rather buy a less expensive light and less expensive flow pumps to make sure I can afford a par meter.
Really?
Because I know for fact that I can grow coral under a Radion or a Prime, or I can grow corals under a Reef Breeders, like all of those lights, no problem. And the disparity between the costs is massive. Yeah. So I would rather get that light and then have the par meter so I can set it up and know it's a non-issue. Or like, I like Ecotech pumps. They're cool. But I would happily go with like some Corallias or like Tunes non-wave pumps, like non-DC pumps. I know I can still get adequate water flow with them.
If I wasn't using the Vortex, which I love because there's no wire, the Neros I'd probably do because they're tiny.
The Neros are nice. Yeah. And they're quite a bit less. Yeah. There you go. If my budget was either I'm getting Vortex and no par meter or Neros and par meter, I'm going Neros and par meter. It's a good tool. And by the way, like you could rent it to your friends because nobody friggin' buys one, but everybody wants to use one.
Yeah, that's exactly. I'm like, just give me a frag or something.
Yeah. So
my rental fee. Yeah. Give me a frag or something cool. Now the other consideration.
There's my answer.
If you're in a fish club or something, you have a group. A lot of times they'll have a par meter, and then you could just borrow it, and then instead of buying one, so that's another consideration.
Yeah.
In the chat, a couple people were saying too, like an ATO, they would never go on a tank without an ATO. For the most part, I agree. However, I've had my first saltwater tank ever was like a 12-gallon fluval edge with a hole this big in the top. That thing didn't evaporate anything. It was literally like a quarter of a cup a week, which is nothing. Same thing. I had one of the BioCube tanks that had the lid on it that had like nothing for evaporation. So there's a lot of, it depends. If you have a lid on your tank, you could probably get away without an ATO. But if it's fully open, then you'll probably want one.
And I'll also say I have not put I guess digital ATO or like electronic ATO on my 300XL. I used the one that came with the sump.
Yep.
That tank back there that has the little ATO thing on it. I'm just going to use that. I mean, it's not a lot of water volume, and I'll probably evap. I might, if anything, this one will probably get a proper ATO. But like in the if you have enough volume and you can get away with a mechanical ATO, that like don't buy an ATO to go on your reefer unless you're planning to like convert that. I know there's like refugium conversions that people do with those, but unless you're planning to do that, just use it. It's fine. Mine's 2 years old almost. Still rocking it.
Only complaint is they're small and they need to be topped off fairly often.
Yeah, it's like 2.5 gallons or
Yeah,
whatever.
so you gotta every like 3 days you gotta like top it off.
Yeah. No, it's 5. Mine's 5 gallons, and I put a
Okay.
5-gallon pail into it once a week for sure.
Okay.
Like for sure. During the winter, it's probably a little bit worse. I bet you I'm doing it every 3 or 4 days, like you're saying. During the summer, it's not as bad, but it's dry. It's dry.
Yeah. On my this totally off topic, but so with ATOs, automating refilling the ATOs is like the best thing ever because it was not painful, but it sucked to refill ATOs all the time. So my water box has like a 40-gallon tank now, so it just never runs out, and it refills itself when it's empty. And same thing with the one on my frag tank; it tops itself off every 3 days. So never having to like think about it is a glorious thing, if you want to get on the fancy automation side of things. Yeah,
I gotta try that.
You do.
It sounds really nice.
It is.
Not lugging buckets is.
It's the best thing ever. Like when I do the odd water change on like the shallow reef tank, then I will lug some buckets but otherwise from that, it's the only time I ever do it. And it's like the biggest thing that's made it so much easier is not hauling around buckets around the house all the time.
You know what? And it's like 10 feet. The Aquaforce is going to sit 10 feet from where my RO unit is. I might as well just do it.
You might as well do that.
We'll talk about that later.
I have 2 different systems on 2 different tanks. I'll give you ideas later.
Sweet.
Giddy. All right, Thomas.
Man, I can't believe it's been 2 hours. 2 hours, 10 minutes.
And it's late for you because you're like 5 hours ahead of me.
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock for me.
Well, I appreciate the wee hours of live streaming with me. Thanks.
Dude, I love hanging out with you. It's fun.
Fun, man. We'll have to do this a little more often, but it's good.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of rabbit holes. All right.
Yeah, like vivariums that I've dragged you into.
Yeah. So on a non-reefing topic, Thomas has somehow lured me into starting a vivarium. So that's going to happen. I'm in the works as a side project. So there'll be a lovely tropical vivarium beside me in the future.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So good. All right, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's live stream. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. Give Thomas some love. Courtney, Melanie, thank you guys very much for the super chats. Much, much appreciated. Awesome live stream in the chat. Thank you, Fish Pony. Much appreciated. But yeah, no, it was fun, buddy. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And yeah, if you did, hit that thumbs up button. Be sure to check out Thomas and his extra energetic, wonderful product review videos. And yeah, I will lure you back on for another stream in the near future.
And I'll see you then.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.